Chapter 5:17. Hundreds of millions of soldiers were killed in one night of battle. Su Luan was checking Sandy's body. Don't get me wrong. He was checking her body and blood. Although it looked like most humans were normal humans without any mixed blood, this was not the case in the world. After dozens of generations, there might be mixed blood from other races. However, after so many times of mixing, the proportion was very low. Most of the heroes in the ancient times were mixed blood. There were many races in this world. After a long history, almost all of them had mixed blood. According to the wizard's research, many humans had a very weak trace of dragon blood in their bodies, which might have been mixed into their bloodline in the ancient times. For example, the northern barbarians had a very weak trace of giant blood in their bloodline. However, this bloodline was too weak. Generally speaking, as long as there was more than 90% human blood in their body, they were considered pure humans. Su Len was checking the bloodline in Sandy's body. Among all of his women, only Sandy was still a normal human. This was not good. Normal humans would age too quickly, and they would not last long. Su Len liked the old, but he also liked the new. Therefore, in order to increase the lifespan and durability of Sandy, he decided to increase her power. The best way to increase power was to become a bloodline warlock. She did not need to study hard. Once awakened, she would have great power. Of course, if she wanted to go further, she would need to study hard and learn more. Su Len had just checked Sandy's potential. Her bones were a bit thin, which was very good for a girl's body. However, it was not good for a warrior. Therefore, Sandy was not suitable to be a warrior or other close combat professions. Su Len checked her power of the will with a crystal ball. Sandy's power of the will was very normal, barely reaching the bottom line of a wizard. It would be difficult for her to become an official wizard. After thinking for a while, Su Len decided to let Sandy become a warlock. After becoming a warlock, her body would be improved, and she would awaken spells. She could try to become a wizard in the future. However, Su Len had not decided which bloodline to give her. There were many types of sorcerers, but the most powerful ones were the dragon blood sorcerers and the divine blood sorcerers. They had the blood of dragons and the blood of gods, respectively. Although their spellcasting abilities were weaker than wizards, their combat power was not much worse. Su Luan couldn't get a god spirit blood pulse. After all, most of the divine-favored sorcerers were descendants of gods. He could try a dragon blood pulse, though. Su Luan's mount, the little female dragon, was a red dragon. However, the consequences of extracting the bloodline were also quite serious. The little female dragon's strength would be greatly reduced. Su Len wouldn't go so far as to attack the little female dragon. Furthermore, if the bloodline was fused with a weak bloodline in the body, there was a chance that the bloodline would be activated and the concentration of the bloodline would increase. What Su Len didn't expect was that, after a series of tests, Sandy actually had some fairy blood in her body. Fairies were a species that was almost extinct on this continent. Fairies were creatures of nature. There were many types of fairies, such as water fairies, flower fairies, big fairies, and many more. Fairies had pointy ears, green or golden hair, and beautiful facial features. They were born with magic, loved peace, and were good at illusions and nature spells. They were not good at fighting, so there were very few of them. However, for various reasons, many of these fairies were captured. For example, flower fairies. They were also called flower fairies or little fairies. They looked like humans, but they had a pair of transparent wings on their back. They were only about 15 centimeters tall, and they could take care of the plants. Many wizards had captured flower fairies in the past, and flower fairies could be used to make fairy dust. Fairy dust was used in many experiments, and many people had captured flower fairies for profit. Tree fairies were similar to fairies, but they were shorter than fairies. They were about 1 5 meters tall, and they also had a pair of translucent wings. They lived in the forest, and they were good at nature spells and illusions. They were also good at growing plants, and they were good at herbology. The blood in Sandy's body should be the blood of the green fairy, but it was too weak. It was only about 3% of the blood in her body. It was basically impossible to awaken it with such a low concentration. It was also almost impossible to find a fairy and extract her blood. There had been no traces of fairies on this continent for thousands of years. Maybe there were fairies living in some remote and dangerous areas, but it was very difficult to find them. Oh right, nature oak. Su Len suddenly thought of the nature oak in the mystery realm. Tree fairies and nature oak trees could live together. At the same time, just like fairies, nature oak trees could activate fairy blood. Although Sandy's fairy blood was very thin, it could still be activated through nature oak trees. As long as she activated her fairy bloodline and became a fairy sorcerer, Su Luen had many ways to improve Xanthi's fairy bloodline. The simplest way was divinity. By giving Xanthi a trace of divinity, she could increase the density of her fairy bloodline. It would take time for nature oak trees to activate Sandy's tree fairy blood. The main reason was that nature oak was still too young and had not fully grown. Although Su Len had given it 2 nature god crystals to evolve into an ancient tree, it still needed time. If nature oak successfully evolved into an ancient tree, then it would only need to cast an initiation spell to awaken the fairy blood in her body. Now, Su Len could only let Sandy learn wizard knowledge and meditation techniques while living around nature oak trees. This was how to activate the bloodline. In fact, if Su Len took a bit of divinity from his body and put it into Sandy's body, it could also awaken her bloodline. However, Su Len's divinity was just enough for him to become a demigod. There were many things that could enhance fairy blood, so Su Len was not worried about Sandy's bloodline being weak. The nature god crystals he gave to nature oak trees last time could also work, and they were very effective. He could only give them to her in the future. Su Len stayed in San Filto City for a week to finish up all the work he had to do during this time. Then, he brought Sandy back to Northern Town City. As soon as they arrived, Su Len went to Northern Wind Academy and helped Sandy with her enrollment. At the same time, he gave her access to the Mystery Realm and the Wizard Tower. At night, Sandy needed to return to the Mystery Realm to live. Su Len purposely built a treehouse next to nature oak trees for her to live in. The nature energy from nature oak trees would constantly nourish her body. In the end, it would activate the fairy blood in her body. After making arrangements for Sandy, Su Len left the Mystery Realm. As soon as he arrived at the Wizard Tower, he heard Hathaway's voice calling for him. When Su Len came to the astrology platform, Hathaway excitedly rushed to him. "Look, the arcane crystal is made. Now we can try to make a diamond golem," Hathaway said excitedly as she hugged Su Len. She held a palm-sized crystal in her hand and asked Su Len for praise. Did the hardness and magic resistance meet the requirements? Su Len took the crystal and checked it. "You can try," Hathaway said. Su Len put more force into his palm. He was now stronger than a dragon. Such a strong force did not cause any obvious cracks on the arcane crystal. Of course, it would be different if he attacked with a weapon. "Not bad," Su Len said as he played with the arcane crystal. "So can we make a diamond golem now?" "We can try. We have some information about the diamond golem. Although it's not perfect, I've already repaired it." "We can repair it as we make it," Hathaway said. "By the way, the diamond golem needs a legendary soul crystal as its soul core. This must be prepared." "A legendary soul crystal? I've already prepared it." Su Len took out a legendary soul crystal from his storage space. In fact, Su Len had an advanced legendary soul crystal. The quality of this soul crystal was very high. Su Len planned to use it to make a stronger construct. The soul core of the diamond golem was enough to use a legendary soul crystal. After the diamond golem is made, we can try to make mithril golems, adamantine golems, arcane guards, and magic breakers. Hathaway said excitedly. We don't have that many soul crystals. Sulen shrugged. Ordinary soul crystals were not difficult to get, but legendary soul crystals were very precious. The places with the most soul crystals were the bottomless abyss and Bator. Demons had more soul crystals, but the quality of the soul crystals in the hands of devils was much higher. If you wanted to get a large number of soul crystals, both the bottomless abyss and Bator could satisfy you, but you had to be able to come back alive. The challenge level of the bottomless abyss and Bator was level 16. This meant that only those above level 16 could try to enter these two planes. The environment in the bottomless abyss was very harsh. Volcanoes, heat, poisonous smoke, magma, dryness, negative energy, and so on. Ordinary humans could not survive at all. Only those above level 16 could move around here. It seems that we need to make an astral gate to travel between planes, Hathaway said as she got up from Sullen's arms. The souls of those demons can also be made into soul crystals. Also, they have divine power. Sulen blinked. It was obvious that Sulen had his eyes on those demons. They were at least at the legendary level. By the way, the Church of the Soul Snatchers has a way to summon demons. We can let them try. Sulen suddenly thought. The Church of the Soul Snatchers had dealt with demons too many times. He could rely on these cultists to summon demons. Chapter 5:18. Sulen had arranged for the members of the Church of the Soul Snatchers to stay in Harvest City. Phyllis had sent many of her men there, including a few high-ranking members of the Church of the Soul Snatchers. Since Sulen wanted to deal with the demons, it was necessary for him to learn more about the situation from these high-ranking members of the Church of the Soul Snatchers. Sir, the members of the Church of the Soul Snatchers have arrived. Are you ready to meet them now? A servant asked respectfully in the study. Sulen nodded and put down the documents. Let them in. Please wait a moment. The servant bowed and took 2 steps back before leaving. Soon, 2 middle-aged men were brought in by the guards. Your Majesty, they are here. Understood. You may leave. Sulen nodded at the guard. After the door to the study closed, Suluan looked at the 2 higher-ups of the Church of the Soul Snatchers. Both of them were in their 40s, and their hair was neatly combed. Their eyes were deep and lustrous, and they had a scholarly aura. They looked like scholars. No one would have thought that these 2 were actually cultists, and cultists who dared to scheme against abyssal demons and demon gods. Now that you have acknowledged Hathaway as your master, I will not pursue the matter from before. But without my orders, you are not to perform any sacrificial rituals for demons and demons, Sulen said in a low voice. Yes, Your Majesty. The 2 men did not hesitate. After all, Phyllis had already told them to do so. By the way, other than the method you used last time, do you have any other way to summon a demon? Sulen asked. You mean we don't have to perform a blood sacrifice to summon a demon? The tall, skinny middle-aged man asked. Yes. Sulen nodded. We do, but we need something else as a sacrifice. The man glanced at Suluan and said embarrassedly, ordinary intermediate demons have to pay intermediate soul crystals, while higher demons have to pay advanced soul crystals. Also, we don't know which demon will be summoned. We need to see which demon responds to the summoning circle to summon it. This kind of summoning has a time limit. When the time is up, they will return to the abyss. As expected. Sulen was a little disappointed. These people used to be in the blood sacrifice business. They had never studied normal summoning spells. However, this was within his expectations. Next, Sulen asked about the Church of Soul Snatchers' methods of worshipping demons and evil gods. Then, he waved his hand and dismissed them. Sulen did not find a simpler way to summon demons. The price of using blood sacrifice was too high, and he did not intend to use this method. He could only put this problem aside for the time being. Maybe I can do it again like how I trained the kobolds? Sulen thought to himself. I wonder if those demons are picky. If they don't like the flesh and soul of the kobolds, then this sacrifice would have been for nothing. After thinking about it for a long time, Sulen finally decided to give it a try on a small scale. It was better to leave it to the spirit snatchers. After all, they were professionals. If he could not rely on blood sacrifice to summon demons, he would have to go to the abyss himself if he wanted to obtain a large number of soul crystals. Sulen was very curious about the abyss. After all, although it was a dangerous place, it was also rich in resources. Many legendary wizards and other legendary powerhouses would travel to the abyss. The first layer of the abyss was the 10,000 abyss plane. It was the closest to the material plane and bordered the hell of Bator. Since ancient times, the war here had never stopped. Every once in a while, the demons would launch a bloody battle to attack the demon fortress. Many legendary demons had been honed in these bloody battles. Sulen was now an advanced legendary. It was not difficult to go to the abyss. As long as he did not provoke the demon lords, he would not be in any danger. After hesitating for a while, Sulen decided to go to the abyss. After all, he was preparing to build the steel golem production line. He needed a large number of high-grade soul crystals. If he wanted to obtain a large number of soul crystals, the abyss was the easiest place. In fact, soul crystals were the currency in interplane transactions. Small transactions would use gold and jewels, but large transactions would usually use soul crystals. There were many planar merchants in the multiverse. These merchants formed caravans and traded with each other in various planes. The basic currency they used was soul crystals. Of course, if they didn't have soul crystals, they could also use other precious materials to exchange for them. For example, high-quality magic gems, earth crystals, natural divine crystals, and other precious materials. The most valuable thing was divinity. Yes, divinity could also be traded, but basically, they would only buy and not sell. Although there were many dimensional merchants, it wasn't easy to meet one. After all, there were too many dimensions in the astral plane. If it wasn't for the fact that your dimension was very prosperous and had a glorious arcane civilization, dimensional merchants were very rare. After all, it was easier to get good things by trading with these prosperous planes. Of course, if they encountered a more primitive plane, these plane merchants would be happy to trade with those people. This primitive plane had not been developed, and it was very likely to produce some precious materials. They would often pay a small price to obtain a large number of precious materials. The arcane civilization of the plane Sulen was in could only be said to be average, and there were very few plane merchants coming to patronize. After patrolling around the secret realm and finding no problems, Sulen went to the wizard tower to look for Hathaway. He still had to be careful when going to the bottomless abyss. He planned to ask Hathaway to help him teleport there and set the return waymark at the same time. It was better to be careful when going to the bottomless abyss for the first time. You're going to the bottomless abyss? Hathaway looked at Sulen in surprise. Yes. Sulen nodded, then leaned on the sofa next to him. There are demons everywhere. It's very dangerous, Hathaway reminded him. I've already learned about the bottomless abyss before coming here. I know what's going on there. Sulen said seriously, many legendary masters will travel to the bottomless abyss. I'm now a high-level legend, so it's not very dangerous for me. Besides, if it's really dangerous, I'll teleport back directly. Okay, I'll help you teleport there. Hathaway shook her head helplessly. She knew that it was difficult to change Sulen's decision. She could only help him prepare. Keep a low profile when you go to the bottomless abyss. There are no rules there. The bigger fist is the law, Hathaway reminded him. Sulen got up and walked over. He stretched out his arm and hugged Hathaway directly. Don't worry, I'll be careful. Then I'll set up the teleportation circle for you. Hathaway kissed Sulen on the cheek, then got up and began to prepare. Entering the bottomless abyss required the use of plane teleportation, which was very simple for Hathaway. Before this, the two had already entered the astral plane and the fire elemental plane. Setting up this kind of plane teleportation was completed very quickly. Sulen stood on a runic array, and Hathaway made some adjustments again before saying, "Get ready, we'll start." "Okay." Sulen nodded. "Remember to keep a low profile. If there's a problem, immediately teleport back. Don't try to be brave," Hathaway reminded again. "Don't worry, I won't take the risk." "I can't bear to part with you guys," Sulen said with a smile. Hathaway rolled her eyes at him. "Sweet talker." "Okay, I'll try to operate it first," Hathaway said as she opened the energy channel. The runic array slowly lit up. After seeing that the teleportation circle was working properly, Heather gestured to Sulen. "Get ready. Activate." A dazzling light rose up. The light from the teleportation circle shot into the sky. A wave of spatial fluctuation came. The next second, the teleportation light disappeared with Sulen's figure in an instant from the wizard tower. Dark clouds rolled in the dim yellow sky. The ground was full of stones, and the air was filled with a strong smell of sulfur. Some ferocious-looking plants grew sparsely around. Barrenness, drought, and chaos represented everything here. There were very few living things here, and animals were even rarer. Occasionally, a mouse would run out of those ferocious vines and quickly disappear. The animals here had been demonized. Even the mice had dark red eyes and sharp fangs. They were very aggressive. A dretch was hiding in the weeds. Its prey was an abyss lizard. Food was very scarce in this desolate land, so it had to be careful. The lizard did not realize that danger was coming. It lay motionless on the rock. Its yellow scales were its best camouflage. Its two eyes were constantly looking around. It was looking for prey. At this moment, on the other side of the mound, a dretch was quietly approaching. Soon, when it was less than a meter away, the dretch suddenly rushed over and grabbed the lizard that was trying to escape. The dretch was very excited. It grabbed a stone and smashed the lizard to death. Then it began to eat. At this time, a light suddenly fell from the sky, and then a figure appeared in this desolate world. "This is the abyss. It's really bad." Sulen looked around and said. Seeing the appearance of a human, the dretch was slightly stunned. In its inherited memory, this creature seemed to be called human. Their flesh and soul were very delicious, and they were very weak. The dretch quickly swallowed the lizard, grabbed a rusty blade next to it, and rushed towards the human. The welcome ceremony of the abyss is a bit special. Seeing the dretch rushing over, Sulen smirked and waved his hand gently. A green wind blade instantly formed, then flew over. Blood splashed everywhere. The dretch was directly cut in half by the wind blade. Chapter 519. The Plane of 10,000 Abyss was the first layer of the abyss. The area here was very vast, and the environment was harsh. Because of the frequent bloody battles, there were many cannon fodder here. Demons were not as orderly as demons. The Abyss Legion was chaotic. Every Abyss Legion would have a large number of cannon fodder. The dretches always liked to swarm around. They bullied the weak and feared the strong. They would only take the initiative to attack when they had an absolute advantage in numbers. They were afraid of strong enemies, but they liked to bully weak enemies. Finally, under the cruel law of survival of the fittest in the abyss, they gradually grew into cannon fodder that could set foot on the battlefield. Usually, dretches existed as coolies. Occasionally, they would be driven to the battlefield by high-grade demons to consume the enemy's magic. There were many dretches in the abyss, but less than 1% of them could evolve from dretches to quasits. As for the probability of evolving to a higher-grade flame demon, it was even lower. Under normal circumstances, there might not be one high-grade demon in 10,000 dretches. In the abyss, only high-grade demons could be considered to have escaped the stage of cannon fodder. No one knew exactly how many levels there were in the bottomless abyss, but every level had different characteristics. For example, there was a bone-chilling ice field, a neat swamp filled with poison, a salt pool with rising mist, a land of lava with magma volcanoes, a strange wasteland with fierce north winds, and so on. The characteristics of these planes were all bestowed by the demon lords and evil gods. The abyss was unfriendly to everyone. It was very difficult to survive here. This place was filled with slaughter. Even the newly born soul worms were devouring each other. Only in this way could they get enough energy to transform into low-grade demons. However, evolving into a demon was just the beginning of their life as cannon fodder. Although the law of survival of demons was bloody and cruel, their speed of evolution was very fast. As long as they killed opponents of similar strength, they could absorb their souls to strengthen themselves. In theory, it would only take a few months for a soul worm to evolve into a high-grade demon. Sulen teleported to a relatively remote location in the plane of 10,000 abyss. There were no high-grade demons around. There were only a few dretches wandering around. Su Luan cast the invisibility spell and the flying spell and chose a direction to move forward. After flying for about 2 hours, Sulen saw a boundless lake in the distance. Just as he was about to approach the lake, a powerful soul wave appeared there. Sulen immediately stopped. This is the mother of worms? In the lake, a gigantic creature slowly floated up. At the same time, a demon egg was sent to the shore by the lake. Thousands of demon eggs began to hatch as soon as they touched the beach. In the blink of an eye, soul worms broke out of their shells. Seeing this, Sulen immediately understood that he had come to the abyssal blood pool, the birthplace of the abyssal demons. After knowing that this was a blood pool, Sulen did not continue to approach. The mother of worms was a special demigod in the abyss. They were the guardians of the blood pool in the abyss, similar to the existence of the demon lord. The abyssal blood pool was the territory of the mother of worms. Here, it controlled everything around it. In the abyssal blood pool, there was even some order. Demons could not attack the soul worms. At the same time, all demons or other creatures were not allowed to approach the abyssal blood pool. Once violated, they would be attacked by the mother of worms. In the abyssal blood pool, the mother of worms could easily kill a powerful Baler under the blessing of the power of the rules. Even the demon lord was not willing to fight the mother of worms here. The law of the jungle was the law here. Being weak was the original sin here. After seeing the abyssal blood pool, Sulen did not continue to move forward. Instead, he changed direction. The plane of 10,000 abyss could be said to be a mix of good and bad. Here, you could meet many humans, orcs, and elves from the material plane. At the same time, you could also meet creatures from other planes. It was not surprising to meet a plane merchant here. Trading here used souls, so killing and extracting souls was a legitimate job to make money. There were also towns in the plane of 10,000 abyss. These towns were basically built by the demon lords. There was a set of rules in the towns. These rules were built by the demon lords. After moving forward for more than an hour, Sulen finally saw a town. However, he did not approach it directly. Instead, he hid and observed. Although he had checked the information about the abyss before coming, it was better to see the actual situation in person. This was a dilapidated town. There were not many buildings in the town. Sulen waited outside the town for a while. A 6-armed Naga walked out of the town. After confirming that there were no other demons, Sulen's figure flashed and followed. The six-armed Naga was a high-ranking demon in the abyss. It had 6 arms and used 6 long swords. These 6-armed Nagas were very strong. The weapons they used were much heavier than the swords used by human knights. When they attacked, the 6 swords were very fierce. After the 6-armed Naga was some distance away from the town, Sulan began to prepare. He took out the storm halberd from his storage space. With a flash of lightning, he suddenly appeared above the 6-armed Naga's head. The storm halberd slashed down with a fierce wind. Clang! With a loud sound, the 6-armed Naga, who sensed the danger, blocked Sulan's attack. However, the power of the storm halberd forced it back. Its arms became numb and trembled. Sulan did not hold back. His figure flashed and rushed up again. The 6-armed Naga, who was only a high-ranking demon, could not resist the full attack of an advanced legendary. In just one exchange, it was defeated by Sulan. Control Demon. With a flash of light, the 6-armed Naga in front of him immediately became sluggish. After seeing that the 6-armed Naga was under control, Sulan began to ask it about the specific situation of the Plane of 10,000 Abyss. In the following time, through this 6-armed Naga, Sulan finally had a clearer understanding of the Plane of 10,000 Abyss. The Lord of the Plane of 10,000 Abyss was a powerful succubus warlock named Red Shroud. Sulan was confused about this race and did not understand why it was called this. The largest city in the Plane of 10,000 Abyss was the Broken Zone. It was also the largest trading area. Basically, all the people and other creatures that came to the Plane of 10,000 Abyss would come here to trade. Sulan had the Naga tell him everything it knew and then had it draw a map. However, the 6-armed Naga's drawing skills were limited. The map was very abstract and could only be used as a reference. After all the information was obtained, the 6-armed Naga lost its value. Sulan's storm halberd gently slid and beheaded the 6-armed Naga. Soul assimilation. A gem flew up. The 6-armed Naga's soul was instantly bound by a chain and then absorbed by the gem. The originally colorless and transparent gem also turned purple. A high-grade soul crystal. Sulan reached out and played with it for a while. There are indeed a lot of souls in the abyss. With the information given to him by the 6-armed Naga, Sulan began to go to the Broken Zone. Along the way, it was a barren land with no sign of human habitation, not even a blade of grass growing, and a deep red sun scorching the earth. Some demons wandered in 2s and 3s. When Sulan found a high-grade demon, he would secretly sneak over. When they were not paying attention, he would launch a sneak attack. Those high-grade demons were not his match at all. Along the way, Sulan had more than a dozen high-grade soul crystals on him. The Broken Zone was built near a huge pit in the abyss. Around the Broken Zone was a collapsed tower. The rocks next to it were bright red with blood. The blood-red walls were traces of bloody battles in the abyss. Even now, the remains of high-grade demons were inlaid on the walls. The largest building here was the underground tomb, which had a large number of undead creatures. Assassination in the abyss was completely legal. As long as the guards did not discover it, it was not considered murder. Many adventurers who had just arrived here were here. In the underground tomb, there were also many shadow liches. They usually lurked in the underground tomb. Only the Lord here could command them. At the same time, this was a good place to dispose of corpses. A large number of corpses were sent here every day. Those shadow liches had created a large number of ghouls here. It was very dangerous. Sulan entered the town. As soon as he entered, he felt many malicious gazes fall on him. Sulan coldly snorted. A flash of lightning flashed in his eyes. Those people and demons who had been staring at Sulan suddenly felt their eyes ache. They knew that they had met an expert and hurriedly looked away. There was no such thing as hiding one's strength here. The humans and demons did not hide their auras. After observing the town for a while, Su Len walked towards a market. As soon as he entered the market, he saw many demons. The demons here were all merchants. Of course, as soon as they left the town, these demons would become bandits. In addition to these demons, Su Len also saw some orcs, grey dwarves, and many succubi. The succubi here were quite exposed. They barely covered 3 vital parts. The Rift Plain had the most succubi except for the territory of the succubi queen. The main reason was that the lord here was also a succubi. One had to be careful when trading here. The merchants would cheat, and the transaction had to be settled in person. Once they left, they could only blame it on their bad luck if they were cheated. Of course, if they were discovered during the transaction, the consequences would be very serious. Even now, the corpses of those who dared to court death were still hanging outside the market to be air-dried. Sullen's eyes kept scanning the surrounding succubi. He had to admit that the succubi were really beautiful and full of temptation. After noticing Sullen's eyes, they kept throwing flirtatious glances at him. It seemed that if Su Len curled his finger, they would pounce on him. Chapter 520. The slaughterhouse was the largest trading market in the entire abyssal region. There was nothing that couldn't be traded here. As soon as Su Len entered, he saw some abyssal beastmen hawking their wares. Although these abyssal beastmen's clothes were ragged, their ferocious aura hadn't weakened in the slightest. In addition to the beastman slaves in this market, Su Len also discovered a stall selling food. But from the looks of it, it seemed to be a kind of humanoid life form. Some demons nearby were secretly sizing him up with cunning and evil eyes. They seemed to be judging the strength of this human, wondering if they could eat this human in the wilderness. The demon lord's orders were only effective in the town. Outside the town, no one would care even if the sky and earth were turned upside down. The ugly and terrifying Onababas were looking at Su Len with their turbid eyes. They were playing with the white bone beads in their hands. If one looked closely, they would discover that these white bone beads were actually human skulls shrunk a dozen times. After seeing Su Len, a trace of greed flashed in the Onababa's eyes. One must know that humans were a popular commodity in the abyss. Souls were a popular commodity, and the flesh on the body was a rare delicacy. Su Len could clearly feel the malicious gazes all around him, but he didn't let it go. He came to the abyss this time for the soul crystals, and he was very covetous of the souls of demons and demons. Besides himself, Su Len also discovered many humans here. Most of these humans had sturdy bodies and ferocious faces. Their bodies were surrounded by a fierce aura, and he could even smell the smell of blood on them. At a glance, he knew that they weren't to be trifled with. These humans were basically notorious villains of the prime material plane. They were basically wanted by the church and various kingdoms. In order to escape, they took the risk to enter the abyss. These people's bloody and chaotic ways were very suitable for the abyss. Here, they would quickly be assimilated by the abyss's pollution and eventually turn into a half-demon, half-human form. These people could no longer leave the abyss. Even if they died, their souls would fall into the blood pool, decompose and reassemble, and finally become a soul worm. What attracted Sullen's attention the most was a group of people covered in grey cloaks. These people were not as sturdy as demons. They looked a little tall and thin, and they were surrounded by an evil aura. These people were night witches, herders of the abyss. They collected the wandering soul worms and then sold these souls to demons or demons. At this time, a soul was placed casually next to the night witches not far away. They were obviously going to sell it. How much is this soul? Su Len came to the night witch's stall and asked. 2 soul crystals, the knight's voice was like 2 rough boards squeezed back and forth. That's sullen zest, he said, and then walked. At this time, a succubus walked up to Su Len. Her eyes were hot and full of provocation. When she came in front of Su Len, she brazenly rubbed her foul weapon against his arm. Then, she winked at Su Len and left. Su Len saw through these succubi very clearly. She thought she hid it well, but in fact, the evil in the depths of her eyes had been exposed long ago. As a high-level succubus, she would absorb the other party's strength and even life force during mating. Often, some newbies would be sucked dry by these succubi. When you go out, don't think that the girls take the initiative to greet you because you are handsome or rich. They are just lusting after your body. Boys should remember to protect themselves when they go out. They should firmly resist those temptations. Otherwise, they would lose everything. It was a small matter if they ran out of ammunition and food. Be careful not to be sucked dry. All the gazes in the surroundings were filled with malice. According to the laws of the material plane, it wouldn't be enough for all of these guys to die 10 times over. If they used a detect evil spell, they would probably all turn red and purple. Su Len strolled around the market. He had to admit that there were many products in the market. Even he was a little jealous of many of them. Unfortunately, he did not have the money to buy them. Su Len glanced around with some regret and left the slaughterhouse. Just as he left, a dozen little tails appeared behind him. Su Len was well aware of these tails. He had just shown himself in the slaughterhouse because of these guys. Otherwise, where would he find high-level soul crystals? Low-level soul crystals were easy to find in the abyss, but high-level ones could only be obtained from high-level demons. There weren't many high-level demons in the wild. Su Len was too lazy to spend a lot of time looking for them in the wild. Now, he had just strolled around and there were at least a dozen high-level demons following him. Su Len pretended to be cautious and sneaked out of Desolate Town. After making sure that those guys were following him, he left the town and walked towards the wasteland. After leaving the town, Su Len immediately quickened his pace and walked towards the depths of the wasteland. It didn't take long for the tails behind him to catch up. The dilapidated and desolate wasteland exuded a faint smell of sulfur. A gust of wind blew, and a rancid smell came from the air. Several rats with blood-red eyes madly attacked Su Len. However, when they were 4 or 5 meters away from him, a lightning flashed and the abyss rat turned into a lump of charcoal. A burnt smell came from the wasteland. Su Len stopped and turned his head to look not far away. Footsteps echoed and a figure appeared in front of Su Len. It was an evil demon. Just you? Su Len frowned slightly. The evil demon didn't have the intention to speak at all. Its figure flashed and instantly appeared beside Su Len. The sharp sword in its hand directly slashed at his neck. It seemed that it wanted to kill him with one blow. But it obviously found the wrong opponent. The moment it appeared, Sullen's storm war halberd instantly struck. Dazzling lightning exploded in an instant. Bang! There was a loud noise. This evil demon that was distorted by the abyss was thin and wrinkled. Under Sullen's exaggerated strength, it was smashed to the ground together with its weapon. Endless lightning instantly wrapped around it. After realizing that something was wrong, the evil demon subconsciously wanted to escape but was paralyzed on the spot. Then, a cold light flashed and endless darkness descended. The evil demon's ugly head flew up, and smelly blood sprayed on the ground. This evil demon was killed by Su Len in one blow. Soul extraction. Soul capture. Sullen's body flashed, and in the next second, the evil demon's gray soul was forcibly pulled out by him. Then, a magic gem appeared. The evil demon's soul was directly sealed in the gem without any resistance. The purple soul crystal fell into Sullen's hand. Not bad, a high-level soul crystal. Su Len played with it for a while and casually put it in his storage space. This time, he went fishing in Desolate Town and lured a lot of bait. Now that the fish had taken the bait, it was time to reap the rewards. Who is it? Su Len suddenly grabbed something behind him, and a palm completely composed of the power of thunder and lightning appeared in an instant. Then he clenched his fist. The big thunder and lightning hand seemed to have caught something, and then a Glabrezu figure was pulled out of the distorted space. Glabrezu. This was a high-level demon from the abyss. This was one of the few demons in the abyss with intelligence. They had violet skin and were proficient in charm. Their combat power was slightly inferior to the Balers. These guys often served as mid-level officials in the demon army in the abyss. Although they were demons, they were different from the chaotic demons. They were one of the few demons that could form a formation. Although Glabrezu also had merchants, they would usually act as bandits. These merchants in the abyss did not have a clean background. In Desolate Town, they were always doing business. In the wild, once they met someone, as long as they felt that the other party was not as strong as them, they would decisively attack. This Glabrezu clearly had bad intentions towards Sulen. While Sulen was fighting with the evil demon, it prepared to sneak an attack. However, it did not expect Sulen to be so strong that the evil demon was defeated in one blow. At this time, it was caught by Sulen before it could get close. The lightning hand instantly grabbed it. Strong lightning continuously entered the Glabrezu's body and paralyzed it. The Glabrezu could not even struggle. At this time, even the stupid demon knew that it had provoked a powerful enemy this time. Sulen's hand tightened. The Glabrezu in front of him did not even have time to speak before it was squeezed into a ball of meat. Endless lightning flashed, and the Glabrezu's body instantly turned into a pile of charcoal. There was a bloody smell in the air. Soul extraction. Confinement. 2 flashes of light flashed. The Glabrezu's soul was skillfully extracted by Sulen and then sealed in a magic gem. A high-level soul crystal was obtained. Sure enough, fishing is the best way. In just a few minutes, he had obtained 2 high-level soul crystals. Sulen was very satisfied with this efficiency. Next, Sulen did not wait for the demons to attack. He had already made his move. It was hard to guarantee that the demons would notice. If they discovered Sulen's strength and ran away, it would not be easy to catch them. Sulen's body flashed. In the next second, he appeared near an old guy wearing a tattered robe. Lightning shrouded him. The storm battle halberd instantly broke the energy shield on the surface of his body. Perhaps it had triggered an accident, but the old guy's body flashed continuously. However, as soon as the light appeared, it dissipated. Su Luan immediately cast an anti-magic spell. These guys who had not yet reached the legendary realm could not cast any spells at all. With a flash of lightning, the shabby robe was directly shattered into countless pieces, and the withered and ugly head was directly cut off. Then, 2 flashes of light rose, and a purple soul crystal quickly appeared in his hand. Chapter 521. Phew. They've all been dealt with. Not bad. On the wasteland, Sulen put the soul crystals he'd just obtained into his storage space. A human lay at his feet, but this human now had a lot of demonic characteristics. This was a human who had been assimilated by the power of the abyss. Normally, he looked no different from a normal human, and he would only turn into a demon when he attacked. This person, who had committed all kinds of crimes in the prime material plane and ended up in the abyss, had finally bumped into the muzzle of a gun and been cleanly disposed of by Suren. It's really easy to do business in the bottomless abyss. I've earned more than a dozen high-grade soul crystals in just a short while. Sulen chuckled. Sulen looked at the half-demon on the ground, resting his chin on one arm as he calculated, by the way, I don't know where this guy is. How much is the reward? Should I bring his head back to claim the bounty? In the end, he still chopped off the guy's head and dealt with it with a spell. However, Sulen didn't store the head in his storage space. Although things in the space were automatically isolated, there were still some psychological effects. Therefore, he used a spell to open up a dimensional space to store the head. You're really lucky to be able to get a single room after death. I'm too merciful. Sulen shook his head and casually threw the head in. This time, Sulen had obtained a total of 13 high-grade soul crystals from fishing. Of course, this was probably the only time he'd made such a huge profit. The deaths of more than a dozen high-grade demons would still attract some attention, not to mention that these demons had followed Sulen out. Although Sulen had killed all the demons, they'd be cautious if he went fishing again. It would probably be difficult to fish again. Maybe I can use another method? Sulen thought. In addition to the soul crystals, Su Luan had also obtained a lot of materials from the deaths of the dozen or so high demons. Although the craftsmanship of the high demons' weapons was average, the materials were still pretty good. Most of them were abyssal magic iron, and some were even mixed with abyssal fire copper. He could still sell them for some money. Moreover, he still had a dozen high-grade soul crystals, which was quite a fortune in the bottomless abyss. Soon, Sulen came up with another plan and began to prepare. First, he reforged these weapons and repaired the damaged ones. The reforged weapons looked much better than before. With a flash of light, Sulen's human form turned into a tall, thin, and ugly evil spirit. He made a mask out of abyssal fiendish iron and put it on. Then, he concealed his aura and walked toward Desolate Town again. When he came to Desolate Town again, Sulen was already very familiar with this place. Moreover, this time, he had changed into an evil demon disguise. The people who paid attention to him instantly decreased by more than half. Those demons just glanced at him and moved away, unlike the first time when they wanted to eat him. Obviously, Desolate Town was quite friendly to him this time. Sulen did not stop. He went all the way to the slaughterhouse market. At this time, it was still very lively. Sulen found the manager and rented a stall. Then, he took out the weapons and sold them. There were good and bad demon craftsmanship. Sulen's weapons were better than the average. Soon, demons came to inquire about the price. These things were not very expensive in the abyss. Sulen sold 2 scimitars and a beheading sword and received 10 mid-grade soul crystals. After taking out 2 soul crystals to pay the tax, Sulen got up and left the slaughterhouse. This time, he was going to change the location of his fishing. As the city of demons, Desolate Town also had bars. The Horn of Plague was the largest bar in Desolate Town. It was said that this bar was opened by Red Shroud. As for whether it was true or not, Sulen did not know. However, no one dared to cause trouble in this bar. The corpses of those who dared to do so were already hung on the display wall outside the bar. As soon as Sulen entered the bar, he felt like a group of demons were dancing wildly. He saw all kinds of demons and travelers from the independent material plane. However, no matter if it was demons, devils, evil spirits, grey dwarves, orcs, or humans, they all behaved very politely. There was no drunken madness. The waitresses in the bar were all succubi. These succubi were dressed in revealing clothes. The pieces of cloth on their bodies were not even the size of a palm. They were also covered with a layer of gauze, which was very tempting. However, the strange thing was that no demons touched these succubi. There were also no guys who were fishing in troubled waters. Sulen raised his vigilance. According to the nature of these demons, the ones who could make them behave were definitely not simple. A cup of raging dragon blood, Sulen came to the bar and said to the succubi inside. Shenghui, 1 mid-tier soul crystal. The succubus winked at Sulen, with her arms propped on the bar and her body slightly leaning forward. Her white breast swayed slightly, which made Sulen's mouth dry and tongue dry. He couldn't help but lower his body to salute. Sulen looked away in a panic. He took out a leather bag from his chest in a hurry and opened it. He seemed to be a little nervous. He tore the bag a little and it fell on the table with a clang. The purple glossy surface flashed under the light. It was a high-tier soul crystal. There were more than a dozen high-tier soul crystals shining with a purple brilliance in his bag. The originally noisy bar instantly quieted down. No matter if they were demons, humans, evil spirits, or devils, they all looked greedily at the bag in Sullen's hand. Sulen seemed to have just reacted. He hurriedly put away all the soul crystals and put them back into his chest. Sulen took out a mid-tier soul crystal and handed it to the succubi. He then looked around as if nothing had happened. The bar became noisy again. However, the situation inside was a little different from before. Many demons, evil spirits, devils, and travelers from the origin material plane couldn't help but glance at Sulen. Obviously, the dozen or so high-grade soul crystals just now had completely attracted the attention of these guys, and their attention was completely focused on Sulen. Many demons were already estimating Sullen's strength. They wondered if they could kill him in the wild and take the soul crystals for themselves. In the corner of the bar, the eyes of some assassin demons shrouded in shadows flashed. It was clear that they were also tempted. These assassins among demons loved to hide in the shadows and launch sneak attacks. They were thin and weak, but their attacks were very strong. They were very good at hiding themselves. Even high-tier demons could be killed by them if they weren't careful. There was a clear distinction between these demons. It was clear that the surrounding demons didn't want to get close to them. Sulen clearly felt the eyes from around him. He purposely acted like he was sitting on pins and needles. The devils around him were also secretly discussing something. These devils who were good at scheming and plotting were also tempted. Although they had a lot of high-tier soul crystals, no one would complain about having too much money. However, they were cautious by nature and hadn't made a decision yet. Your raging dragon blood. The succubi placed a flaming cup of scarlet wine in front of Sulen. Her curvaceous body turned slightly, and she sat directly in Sullen's arms. Her other hand directly touched Sullen's vital part. Do you want this big sister to help you relax? It's free. The succubus's bouncy buttocks were pressed against Sulen's thighs today. Her original salute was suppressed. The succubus smiled slightly and deliberately moved her buttocks against his thighs. Her buttocks just happened to hit that gap. Cough, cough. I don't need it for now. Sulen reluctantly rejected the succubi's good intentions. Sigh, he could only sacrifice it for the sake of fishing. Disappointing. After being pushed away by Sulen, the succubi was clearly unhappy. However, she didn't continue to pester him and left reluctantly. Sulen picked up the wine cup. This cup of dragon blood looked like burning magma. The temperature was very high, and the color of the wine was blood red. In addition to the rich wine fragrance, there was a faint smell of blood. After taking a light sniff of the wine, Sulen raised his head and drank the wine. A burning sensation came from his mouth. Sulen swallowed the wine. The strong wine that could ignite a normal person directly entered his body. The flaming wine churned. Sullen's entire body felt like it was burning. After a while, the feeling disappeared. A comfortable feeling spread from inside to outside. Comfortable, transparent. Seeing Sulen drink the wine, many demons around looked away. The raging dragon blood was a relatively dangerous wine in the tavern. Only high-level demons could taste it. Otherwise, they would be burned to death if they weren't careful. Not everyone could enjoy wine in the abyss. The wine here was completely poisonous to normal people. One cup could burn them to death. The cup of raging dragon blood that Sulen just drank was not wine at all. It was liquid fire elemental power. Then, some abyssal demon dragon blood and wine were added. It was blended with a special method. Even if normal people weren't burned to death, they would be corroded into a pool of blood. Not only did the abyssal demon dragon blood have the power of fire, but it was also highly toxic. Even mid-level demons would be poisoned to death. After Su Len drank the wine and put down the cup, he glanced around the bar as if nothing had happened. When he saw that everyone seemed to be paying attention to him, Su Len got up and left the bar. Just after Su Len left, the demons beside him couldn't help but get up and leave. As these demons left, the other demons and evil gods couldn't help but get up and leave the bar. They all went to stay with Su Len. The demons were getting anxious. They stood up and prepared to leave, but as soon as they stood up, the leader of the demons pulled them back, shook his head slightly, and sat down. Then, he said to the confused demons, "Sit down, we won't participate." Chapter 522. In the dim yellow sky, an evil sun shone on the earth. The evil sun was constantly radiating the evil and chaotic power of the abyss. The streets of Desolate Town were filled with a strong smell of sulfur, mixed with a faint smell of blood. Although killing was forbidden in Desolate Town, it was only on the surface. As long as one was not discovered, the guards would not interfere. Therefore, it was not as safe as one imagined. Su Len walked on the street expressionlessly. He knew that there were many eyes behind him. Without stopping in the town, Su Len hurriedly walked out of the town. As soon as he left the town, he immediately sped up and ran towards the wilderness. Before he started fishing, Su Len had found a suitable place nearby. Now, he was going to lure the demons there. Seeing Su Len fleeing, the demons behind him were not anxious at all. Instead, they vigilantly looked at the demons who had the same idea as them. In their opinion, Su Len was a fat sheep on the chopping board. They could eat him however they wanted. The only problem was that many demons had their eyes on this fat sheep. A dozen high-grade soul crystals were enough to tempt these high-grade demons. Demons could absorb soul power to enhance their strength. A dozen high-grade soul crystals could even make a high-grade demon evolve into a legendary demon. These demons could not resist this temptation at all. About half an hour later, Su Len stopped at a call, and then quietly waited for the fish he had caught. "They're here." Su Len's eyes flashed. Then, he suddenly pointed to a place not far away. Anti-magic field. A strange power descended from the sky and instantly shrouded the surrounding area. At this moment, the area seemed to have been sealed. All demons, and humans seemed to have been isolated from the abyssal plane at this moment. The original spell-like abilities had all lost their effect. At this moment, no matter how stupid these demons were, they knew that the guy they had treated as a fat sheep was actually a peerless beast. 17. Seems like we have a good harvest this time. Su Len's voice sounded in the ears of these demons. Upon hearing Su Len's voice, the expressions of the demons changed drastically. Without thinking, they turned around and tried to escape. However, as soon as they moved, more than a dozen lightning bolts fell from the sky and struck them instantly. The powerful power of lightning instantly paralyzed the bodies of these demons. Immediately after, countless lightning bolts descended from the sky, instantly enveloping all the demons. With Su Len's current strength, these demons that had yet to reach the legendary level wouldn't be able to last long against the lightning that he summoned. There's a little mouse here. Su Len raised his hand and threw a bolt of lightning at a thorny bush on the side. Lightning flashed, and the space was instantly torn apart by the lightning. A tall figure jumped out in a sorry state, and the lightning whip instantly trapped the figure. This was a high-level succubus. She had tried to escape by hiding in the dimensional space, but Su Len had torn the space apart and caught her. Stop. I didn't mean to offend you. My master is Red Shroud. The succubus shouted the moment she was caught by Su Len. She was afraid that she would end up like those demons earlier if she was a second late. The opponent was unexpectedly powerful. She didn't have any room to resist and was restrained in an instant. Su Len stopped what he was doing, and the dazzling lightning in his hand gradually dispersed. Seeing this, the succubus heaved a sigh of relief. She was almost scared to death just now. Your master is Red Shroud? Su Len waved his hand, and the succubus that was bound by the lightning whip flew to him. Yes, my master is Red Shroud. After hearing Sullen's question, the succubus nodded and said. Why are you following me? Su Len asked directly. He didn't intend to kill this succubus. If he did, it was likely that the ruler of the broken region, Red Shroud, would be attracted. Red Shroud was the lord of the Rift Plane. She could obtain a plane bonus here and was a powerful demon lord. There were rumors that Red Shroud was the daughter of the succubus queen, Mechanut. There were also rumors that Red Shroud was an incarnation of Mechanut. However, no matter which one it was, it would be very difficult to deal with. Red Shroud had ruled this layer of the abyss for thousands of years. She hadn't been overthrown until now, so one could imagine how powerful she was. Su Len didn't want to offend her so easily, not to mention her relationship with Mechanut. There were two most dangerous women in the bottomless abyss. One of them was the Spider Queen, Lolth, and the other was this succubus queen who had lovers all over the universe. Who knew when she would be in the mood to ask her lover for help? The Rift Plane was the core battlefield of the Abyss Blood War. Many demon lords left their flags here. The succubus queen was not an easy person to deal with. I just followed to take a look. The succubus said embarrassedly. Really, just to take a look? Su Len looked at the succubus and said with a faint smile. It's true. Her Excellency Red Shroud asked us to pay attention to the powerhouses who came to the abyss to collect information. There were more than a dozen higher demons in the tavern moving together, which naturally attracted our attention. This is just a routine check. We don't mean to target you. Seeing Sullen's expression, the succubus quickly said. Well, I'll believe you for now. But you may have to stay here for a while. Su Len smiled gently, and then lightning flashed. Thunder Prison. Lightning instantly fell and completely wrapped the succubus in front of him. The endless power of thunder and lightning entangled with each other and directly formed a cage completely woven with the power of thunder and lightning. Well, as long as you stay in the Thunder Prison, I'll guarantee your safety. If you don't. Su Len smiled slightly, grabbed a weapon made of abyss magic iron, and then threw it on the Thunder Prison. The dazzling lightning instantly exploded, and the weapon made of abyss magic iron melted into drops of molten iron. Don't touch the lightning. Otherwise, you'll end up like these things. Su Len smiled gently, and then pointed at the charred demons not far away. The succubus only felt a chill rising from the bottom of her heart. Sullen's smile made her feel that it was the most terrifying thing. She subconsciously nodded, and did not dare to have the slightest intention of refusing. Very good. It seems that we have reached a consensus. Su Len nodded, and then said with a smile, don't worry. This Thunder Prison can only exist for a day. After the time is up, it will automatically disappear. Of course, if you feel that you're strong enough, you can also try to leave from inside. The succubus's beautiful head shook like a rattle drum, and repeatedly promised that she would not leave until the Thunder Prison completely disappeared. After locking up the succubus, Su Len continued to deal with the dozen or so demons and evil spirits. After the electrotherapy just now, the severely mentally ill patients had all been cured. Next, Su Len began to collect the rewards. Rays of light flashed, and the souls of these demons were sealed in magic gems by Su Len. Looking at the dozen or so high-grade soul crystals in his hand, this fishing operation was successfully completed. After cleaning up everything on the battlefield, Su Len began a new round of fishing operation. After changing into another alias, Su Len changed to another place this time. This was not the only trading market and bar in the Broken Zone. Soon, Su Len came online again. After changing to another market, Su Len again accidentally leaked a large number of soul crystals. Then, he left the trading market in a panic and hurriedly left the town. After that, there was no after. In a remote wasteland, Su Len once again harvested a dozen or so high-grade soul crystals. After changing into another alias, Su Len repeated the previous routine. At this time, Su Len had to rejoice. The chaotic, evil, and selfish nature of the abyss demons was really too good. With such a simple fishing technique, those demons would easily take the bait without the slightest doubt. Those demons, for example, were not so easy to bait. After fishing a few times, Su Len still did not catch a single demon. Although the process of harvesting the demon's wool was very smooth, he could not harvest only one demon's wool. If there were too many of them, it would definitely attract the attention of others. Even the demons, who were naturally chaotic and evil, were not fools. Therefore, after completing 5 fishing attempts, Su Len left the broken zone and went to other places in the 10,000 Abyss Plain. After these few fishing attempts, Su Len also obtained a lot of information about the Abyss, such as the Abyss Blood War. The demon lords of the bottomless abyss all had their demon legions join the Abyss Blood War. The Abyss Blood War was not only a battle between demons and demons, but also between demons and demons sometimes. Thousands of demons and demons fought in the vast abyss. When exactly did the Abyss Blood War start? No one could say for sure now. The Abyss Blood War had already broken out in the years before civilization was recorded. At first, the opponents of the Abyss Blood War were not demons, but the ancient gods of order. However, this battle lasted for too long. The number of demons seemed to be endless, and even the ancient gods of order were tired of it. Later, the ancient gods of order created a kind of intelligent life, which were warriors and servants with wings. The ancient gods of order gave them divine spells, and these glorious creatures were called angels. In the following time, these angels replaced the ancient gods of order to fight the endless demon legions. Among all the angels, Asmodeus was the bravest and most beautiful angel. She was also the archangel of all the angels. She killed more demons than the other angels, and even the gods were not as many as she killed. But after endless years, as the angels on the front line, they were also infected with some of the enemy's characteristics. Chapter 523. After fighting with the demons for a long time, these angels began to be infected with some of the characteristics of the demons. Their beautiful appearance began to become ugly, and their strength became more powerful. The gods of order and other angels were also afraid of them. In the end, under the request of the residents of heaven, the gods of order expelled Asmodeus, and Asmodeus was asked to be judged in front of the god of valor. Asmodeus gladly accepted the accusation, and then he found provisions from the Book of Order that were helpful to him, and he used these provisions to defend himself. In the end, he succeeded in getting what he wanted with his own cleverness, and the gods of order could only accept it. From then on, this former archangel, the bravest warrior of the gods of order, became the master of the 9 hells of Bator, the archdevil. Of course, as a condition, the demons led by Asmodeus had to stop the demons. This was also the origin of the Abyss Blood War. Every day, there were countless demons fighting on the battlefield of the Abyss Blood War. Countless demons died every moment, and there would be countless lesser demons and dretches born under the laws of the plane to continue fighting. The Abyss Blood War had even become a rule. In the Abyss Blood War, killing the enemy could absorb the enemy's power. For those who wanted to level up or those who wanted to rely on the Abyss Blood War to become stronger, this was the fastest place to become stronger. A low-level dretch could directly advance into a Hezru after a blood war. If he could survive a few blood wars, he could even advance into a 6-armed Marillion, Assassin, Baylor, and other high-grade demons. There were even rumors that there were gods who fell in the Abyss Blood War, but what was frightening was that the gods who died in the Abyss Blood War could no longer be resurrected. So basically, all the gods chose to withdraw from the Abyss Blood War, and at most, they would only send some believers to participate. This strange rule made many powerful beings cautious. Even the demon lords and the archdevils of hell rarely took the risk to go into battle. The Abyss Blood War was the place with the most high-grade demons and high-grade devils, but Sulan did not even have the slightest idea of getting close to the Abyss Blood War. Although his strength was not bad, he was still far from the gods. Even the gods could fall, so he did not feel that he was stronger than those gods. Of course, after the bloody battle, a large number of high-ranked demons were born, and even legendary demons were born. This place became a training ground for abyssal lords and archdevils. Sulan didn't care about the bloody battle in the abyss. After collecting information, he went to other towns and used the same fishing method to obtain a large number of soul crystals. However, it was a pity that this fishing operation did not catch any legendary demons. After staying in the abyss for some time, Su Luan discovered that the legendary demons and demon lords of the abyss were completely different from ordinary chaotic, evil, and brainless demons. They were deceitful and treacherous, not in the least bit inferior to devils. Those simple-minded demon lords had already been killed by all kinds of schemes and machinations. Of course, the only exceptions were the powerful existences who could ignore schemes and machinations, such as demon princes. None of the surviving demons were simple. Finally, after another fishing operation, Sulan had accumulated about 500 high-grade soul crystals in his hands. After this period of fishing, even the chaotic demons finally realized that there was not much left to do. Next, Sulan went fishing again, but the profits were obviously much lower. He knew that this fishing operation was about to end. After leaving his coordinates in the abyss, Sulan activated the teleportation coordinates that Hathaway had left for him. A teleportation light soared into the sky, and in the next second, Sullen's figure disappeared from the bottomless abyss. Northern Wilderness, North Town City, North Wind Tower, Astrology Platform. A beam of light descended from the sky, and Sullen's figure appeared on the astrology platform. Phew, I'm finally back. Sulan let out a long sigh of relief. Welcome back. Hathaway, who had hurried over, said with a smile, looking at you, you must have had a good harvest. I've asked someone to prepare food, and it will be sent over soon. Also, do you want to take a bath and rest first? Sulan looked at his body. Although there was no dust on him, the thick sulfuric smell unique to the abyss was unpleasant. He nodded and said, I'll go take a bath first. Prepare the food, I'll be back soon. With that, he teleported away and went to the bathroom to wash up. When he reappeared, he had changed into a neat linen bathrobe and was preparing a feast meticulously prepared by the halfling human chef, Frodo. I haven't eaten this food for a few days, I'm really craving it. Sulan came to the table and quickly picked up food with his chopsticks. During this time in the abyss, he had only eaten some dry rations. There was very little food in the abyss, and how could you expect a demon to have good cooking skills? There were also those strange ingredients. Sulan had no appetite at all. Once, he saw their top-notch delicacies in a tavern in a town. A pot of soup cooked with eyeballs made Sullen's scalp tingle, but those demons ate very happily. Since then, Sulan had a psychological shadow of the so-called abyss delicacies. This thing was really not something that ordinary people could enjoy. After enjoying a sumptuous feast, Sulan drank a cup of green tea with a relaxed expression. This time, we have obtained a total of more than 500 high-grade soul crystals, which is enough for the time being. I think we can try to build the steel golem production line. More than 500 high-grade soul crystals. As expected of the abyss, the souls are really rich. Hathaway was surprised by Sullen's harvest this time. With so many soul crystals, we can indeed use them for a long time. The steel golem production line indeed needs to be built. Hathaway nodded and said. The golem factory was a large-scale project. In fact, all kinds of golems were produced independently by different production lines in the golem factory. Very few golems could share a set of production lines. Clay golems were molded into a ceramic-like substance, rock golems were carved, and steel golems were forged from various metals, so they required different production processes. However, they also had something in common, and that was the inscription of magic patterns. All golems needed to be inscribed with mageweths. However, the techniques used to inscribe mageweths differed from one golem to another. After all, clay, rock, and steel were made of different materials, so the carving knives and materials needed to inscribe mageweths were also different. The magic pattern inscription workshop now only had one magic pattern inscription equipment, which could inscribe 6 golem parts at a time. Su Lan did not intend to continue producing magic pattern inscription equipment for the time being. The production of one magic pattern inscription equipment required a legendary soul crystal, and the legendary soul crystal in his hand was prepared for the diamond golems. Su Lan intended to make 2 diamond golems, and with the addition of more than 500 steel golems, as well as more obsidian and rock golems, he could form a powerful golem army. With such a large golem army, even dealing with a demon army would not be a problem. After all, magic constructs like magic golems had far too many advantages. They were immune to diseases, lethargy, aging, mental attacks, poison, paralysis, instant death, intimidation, heavy blows, crippling, bruising, attribute absorption, and energy absorption. They also had dark vision, didn't need to eat, drink, or breathe, and could work 24/7. Compared to them, the demons couldn't use many of their methods. Abilities such as evil aura, blasphemous words, and stinking cloud were directly useless. Compared with the chaotic command of the demons, the golem army would strictly follow orders. That was why the Arcane Kingdom could rely on the golem army and the floating space city to conquer the multiverse. Not long ago, Su Lan learned in the Abyss Blood War that compared with the demon army, the number of the devil army was usually only 1/10 of the demon army. However, when the gap was 10 times larger, the devil army would basically win the final victory. One of the reasons was discipline. The devil army had very strict discipline, which was completely incomparable to the scattered demon army. Compared with the golem army, even the devil army could only admit defeat. Su Lan now had a clay golem production line. Later, after building the obsidian factory, he built the rock golem production line. However, the scale of the rock golem production line was not large, and many places needed manpower to make them. As for the steel golem production line, a large amount of steel was needed as raw materials. The steel workshop in Northern Town needed to be transformed, and then it would provide materials for the steel golem production line. Some simple parts could even be cast in the steel workshop, while those difficult parts needed to be forged mechanically. Although the steel golem had steel in its name, the material used was not ordinary steel, but magic steel. This metal required the addition of some other materials during the smelting process. It was a special alloy. High-quality magic steel was hard and tough, resistant to corrosion, abrasion, high temperature, and had good plasticity. At the same time, it also had good magical properties. It was very good to use this material to make steel golems, and after engraving various magic patterns, the physical and magical defense of the steel golems would be raised to a very high level. The next steel golem production line would need a lot of clay golems to act as workers to operate it. It wasn't that Su Lan didn't want to only do a fully automated production line. The main reason was that he didn't have many legendary soul crystals. The fully automated production line needed soul crystals to make the tower spirit to control it. The cost of only making a set of steel golem production line was very high. The initial estimate was at the level of 1,000,000 kinnar. In the future, the production of steel golems would also require a lot of money. This was a big money burner. The cost of a steel golem, excluding the soul core, was 70,000 to 80,000 kinnar. The golem army of the floating space city was completely piled up with countless kinnar. One couldn't afford it without money. Chapter 524. Some people said that arcanists were just throwing money at others, and it did make some sense. Whether it was the floating city or the golem army, they were all built with money. A steel golem cost 80,000 kinnar, and a diamond golem cost more than 1,000,000. According to the standard of the golem army, each of the 500 steel golems cost 80,000 gold coins, which would add up to 40 million gold coins. 2 steel golems would cost around 2 million to 3 million gold coins. The remaining 1,500 stone golems cost around 30,000 gold coins each, which would add up to a total of 45 million gold coins. In total, the entire golem army would cost an astonishing 100 million gold coins. The Florentine kingdom's annual revenue was barely 8 million gold nars. It would take the Florentine kingdom 13 years of tax revenue to barely reach 100 million gold nars. Among these, high-grade and legendary-grade soul crystals were things that couldn't be bought with money. The materials needed to build a floating city cost at least 100 billion kinnar. It could be said that if it weren't for the minerals found in Sullen's territory and the rich resources of the underground world, he wouldn't even be able to build a wizard tower, let alone a golem army. Although the golem production line cost a lot, most of the materials were produced in the northern city, so it didn't really cost that much. Similarly, the materials used to build the golem army were basically provided by the northern city. The obsidian golem's main materials were provided by the obsidian workshop, which directly reduced the cost of the obsidian golems by half. In addition, most of the other materials could be obtained from the secret realm and the underground world, which ultimately reduced the cost of the obsidian golems by 80%. If it weren't for the various resources in the underground world and the secret realm, Sullen wouldn't even be able to build the golem army, and even the construction of the wizard tower would have been delayed for a long time. He had to admit that it was a wise choice to build a city in the northern city. Who would have thought that he would find a passage to the underground world here? In addition to these resources, the northern city also built a large number of factories. Originally, there were pottery, brick kilns, wine, sugar factories, and other factories in North City. Now, Sullen had also opened a porcelain and glass factory. Now, the goods in North City were very popular in several kingdoms around Florence. In addition to these, the perfume and soap factories proposed by Sullen had also begun to be put into production. Perfume and soap products could be said to be the favorite of those noble ladies and ladies, who were even crazy about these daily necessities. These daily necessities weren't cheap at all. They were all consumables. It could be said that northern garrison cities' income had been steadily increasing. After some calculations, northern garrison cities' monthly income had reached 1.2 million kinnar. The income of Beifong Duchy's 3 cities was higher than that of the entire kingdom of Florence. If not for the fact that Sullen had become the king of the kingdom of Florence and his own strength, he would not have been able to defeat Sullen. The nobles and kings would never let go of such a lucrative opportunity. But even so, the caravan in the northern garrison city continued to expand. Putting everything else aside, just the caravan guards already numbered in the thousands. Sullen first went to the secret realm to see the crystal beasts. At present, the crystal beasts had multiplied to more than 200. Every month, they would provide a batch of high-quality magical crystals to North City. Some of these magical crystals were used to repair the secret realm, and some were used to build the wizard tower. In the future, these magical crystals would also be used to build the floating space city. The mining area in the underground world was still the same. All kinds of mines were being mined in an orderly manner. Among them, the iron ore output was the highest. There were also copper, zinc, lead, silver, tungsten, gold, and so on. The mining of mithril was still very slow. There were only about 20 pounds of mithril in the warehouse, 25 pounds of adamantine, and 20 pounds of orichalcum. These precious metals were far from enough to build the floating space city, but they were barely enough to build the floating space tower. In addition, there were 130 pounds of various magic gems. Among them, there were about 30 pounds of high-quality magic gems. These magic gems could be used as materials for magic experiments, and could also be used to make magic equipment. Su Lan even considered equipping the students of North Wind Academy with some magic equipment in the future. There were also many miscellaneous things that Su Lan handed over to others to take care of. As a king and a wizard, he did not have the time and energy to pay attention to these trivial matters. After dealing with the matters here, Su Lan and Hathaway set off for the obsidian factory together. He went there this time, on the one hand, to transport the obsidian back. On the other hand, he needed to start a large-scale construction of the iron golem production line. The iron golem production line consumed a lot of energy. He had to find a way to build an energy transmission pipeline. The clay golem production line could be used in this way. When the iron golem production line was built in the future, an independent elemental pool would have to be built in the iron golem production line to provide energy. Tower Spirit Number 1. Show me the design of the iron golem production line that I drew last time. Hathaway looked at the iron golem production line and the obsidian factory in front of her, then frowned slightly. I always feel that these places that were designed and built last time are not beautiful enough, and the planning is a bit messy. I think this iron golem production line can be adjusted again. Tower Spirit, list out all the problems that have occurred in the production line during this period. Soon, the factory Tower Spirit showed all the problems that had occurred in the production line and the obsidian factory during this period of time. Soon, a lot of text and images appeared on the display screen. Hathaway began to solve these problems one by one, and at the same time, upgrade the production line. Everything in the obsidian factory was normal. This area was directly isolated by Su Lan, and no one was allowed to enter. In the deepest part of the volcano, in the huge magma pool, 2 large lava elementals were still working hard. They were like fish in water in this magma environment. The Tower Spirit scanned the obsidian factory with its aura. All the clay golems were operating normally, and the obsidian produced was regularly placed in the warehouse. The upgrade plan of the Wizard Tower had not stopped. Hathaway was ready to upgrade the Wizard Tower into a floating space tower, but there was still a shortage of materials, and obsidian was one of the materials that she lacked the most. Hathaway wanted to use obsidian to cover the entire foundation. Because obsidian itself had the ability to conduct magic, simple runes could become a carrier of magic power, and at the same time, its hardness was very high. This was an important energy channel for the construction of the Enigma and the floating space tower in the future. The construction of the Enigma could enhance the defensive power of the Northern Citadel and the Wizard Tower, and at the same time, it could greatly reduce the difficulty of casting spells, so that the wizard apprentices in the floating space tower could also rely on the Enigma to obtain simple casting abilities. If the Enigma could continue to be upgraded into an artificial magic net, then it would be more useful, and even ordinary people could cast spells. According to different talents, ordinary people could cast a lot of 0-level tricks. If they were slightly more talented, then they could also learn some low-level spells. Of course, this ability was only useful within the coverage of the artificial magic net of the floating space city. If they were out of the coverage of the artificial magic net, then ordinary people who obtained the ability to cast spells would be instantly beaten back to their original state. After checking the design drawings of the factory, Hathaway began to upgrade and transform the place, because this upgrade and transformation required a lot of adjustments. Fortunately, the factory Tower Spirit was there to assist, or the two of them would have taken a long time to complete the work. After the adjustments, the production efficiency of the golem production line had obviously improved, and all kinds of small problems were basically solved. However, after the upgrade and transformation, the golem puppets on the production line also needed to be reinstilled with work skills. Next, Hathaway first sorted out the operation technology of the upgraded golem production line, and then transmitted it to the Tower Spirit, so that it could master the various technology of the upgraded golem factory. As a light rose from Hathaway's body, a strong soul power gushed out from her body, and then instantly connected to the Tower Spirit. The faintly discernible balls of light entered the tower spirit, and after a while, these spiritual lights disappeared. Tower spirit. Optimize and upgrade the production technology of these clay golems. Yes, master. Following Hathaway's order, the tower genie slowly raised a ball of aura. This ball of aura absorbed a large amount of energy. Soon, this ball of aura shot out a beam of aura and landed on the clay golems. The tower genie was the terminal auxiliary tower genie of the golem factory. It could directly add new functions to the golems, but doing so consumed energy. Under normal circumstances, Hathaway would not waste energy on this. Start loading program. Loading progress, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, 100%. Loading complete. Activating the craftsmanship related to the golem factory. The factory tower spirit's loading ability was limited, and the soul core of these clay golems was also limited, so it could not add too many craftsmanship skills. Therefore, these clay golems were only loaded with 1 or 2 craftsmanship skills, such as carving, smelting, forging, and so on related to the production of golem puppets. At most, it could only load up to expert-level craftsmanship skills, and it was basically impossible to load up to master-level craftsmanship skills. Of course, Sulen would not be so extravagant to add such high-level craftsmanship skills to these clay golems. Basically, high-level craftsmanship was enough, because the higher the level of craftsmanship, the more energy it would consume, and it would require higher quality soul crystals as the core. This was the same as loading work programs on robots. The higher the level, the greater the amount of data needed. At the same time, there was also a greater demand in terms of hardware. You could not only ask an artificial intelligence like AlphaGo to use a Pentium 256 CPU. Chapter 525. The soul core of an ordinary clay golem was made of low-level soul crystals. If the legendary Tower Genie was compared to a quantum supercomputer, then the soul crystal of this clay golem was at most the CPU of a Pentium 512. The difference could be said to be like heaven and earth. In fact, the difference was even greater. After upgrading the production line and the obsidian workshop, Sulen and Hathaway began to expand the factory. The 2 production lines originally took up more than 1,000 square meters of space. This time, the steel golem production line needed even more space. The production of the steel golem could be divided into 3 parts. The first was the construction of the limbs. This step could be done separately. The raw materials needed for the steel golem were made in the steel factory. Some of the parts were directly cast, so this part could be completed by skilled craftsmen. After the casting, the various parts would be polished. In addition to these cast parts, there were also some parts that needed to be forged. After these parts were completed, they had to be sent to the next workshop for mageweth engraving. The second part was the mageweth engraving. This part was very critical, and there could not be the slightest deviation. Otherwise, it would cause the entire golem to not operate smoothly, stop working, and so on. The third part was the assembly of the body structure. This step was like piecing together toy models to assemble the complete structure of the golem. The fourth part was the activation of the spell. This part could not be automated at the moment, so Hathaway had to do it herself. Because there was already an automatic inscription machine for mageweth engraving, the main work of the steel golem production line was the first 2 parts. A steel golem required about 10 tons of steel. This steel was called black magic steel, and it was the steel used for steel golems. There was basically no problem with this. With the construction of the steel factory in North Town, there were now 4 50-ton furnaces in North Town. With full production, they could completely meet the needs of the steel golem production line. Black magic steel was ordinary steel with some other metals and enchanted materials added to it. Finally, it was smelted into a special alloy. The main craftsmanship to make a steel golem was pouring and forging. These required the craftsman to polish the parts. The Mageweth engraving part could be done by the automatic Mageweth engraving machine controlled by the Tower Genie. Mechanical constructs mainly used forging equipment, quenching equipment, and assembly equipment. Hathaway could easily take care of these. In the end, the completed steel golem would be stored in the warehouse, and there would be no soul crystals installed as its core. The soul core of the steel golem was made from high-grade soul crystals. This kind of soul core required Hathaway and Su Len to personally make it. Of course, Alex and Karina couldn't escape from this task as well. They couldn't make legendary-grade soul cores. Only Hathaway could. Although making a soul core of this level was difficult for the few of them, it was still manageable. If he wanted to activate the steel golem, he would need to put in a soul core and then cast a spell to activate the life of the construct. This step would have to wait until the golem factory had accumulated a certain amount of stock before letting Hathaway complete it in one go. Although all of this sounded simple, it was very difficult to actually do it. After all, if this wasn't a magical world with extraordinary powers, it would take months or even years to complete a production line with just 2 people. The two went back and forth between the Wizard Tower and the Obsidian Factory almost every day. It took him nearly a few days just to lay the energy transmission pipes. During this time, 80 to 90% of the magic crystals stored in the Obsidian Factory had been consumed. The clay golems that were loaded with the new technology underwent a second modification after a short period of adaptation. After the previous modification, many of the clay golems still had some minor problems in their work. This time, it was to make some adjustments to these clay golems. After the adjustments, the clay golems produced basically had no other problems, and the operation of the assembly line was smoother. The entire golem factory was operated in the manner of an assembly line. The head, torso, and limbs were all made separately. These clay golems loaded with crafting skills were each responsible for a part. Out of almost 100 finished products, 97 could be used. Finally, Hathaway was responsible for the acceptance and monitoring of a clay golem specially made. Hathaway even used a high-grade soul crystal to give it more powerful computing power and intelligence. With higher intelligence, this clay golem could determine whether the golem body parts produced were qualified, then complete the assembly process and put them in the warehouse. Preliminary statistics. With sufficient raw materials, the steel golem production line could produce 1 unactivated golem puppet every day if it operated at full capacity. If she wanted to further increase the production capacity, Hathaway would have to recruit wizard apprentices or load new auxiliary golems. If 1 clay golem a day, 30 can be produced in a month. Now, 500 high-grade soul crystals can be used for about a year and a half. It can be used for a while. Su Len said after some calculations. After testing the golem production line, Hathaway nodded and said, in terms of materials, we can let Alex and Karina take turns to replenish. The completed steel golems can be activated once a month. There are also legendary soul crystals. How troublesome. Hathaway shook her head and said. It's very difficult to get soul crystals in the material plane. It seems that we'll have to go to the abyss every once in a while. Su Len said after thinking for a while. Let's not worry about that for now. We need to test the normal operation of the factory first. With Sullen's order, the entire steel golem production line began to operate. The clay golems operated normally, and the entire assembly line ran smoothly. After seeing that the steel golem production line was running well, Su Len and Hathaway were relieved. Looking at the steel golem production line running normally, Su Len and Hathaway looked at each other and smiled. It seems that we've succeeded this time. The next thing we need to prepare are the diamond golems. Some time ago, the arcane crystal was successfully refined, and the method of making the diamond golems is almost done. It's just right for us to try it out. Hathaway said with a smile. Be careful. Try a few more times. It doesn't matter even if you fail. We don't have any enemies that are a big threat to us now. There's no hurry. Sulen nodded and said. Don't worry, I won't mess around. Hathaway said. Chapter 526. When Hathaway went to make the diamond golems, Sulen couldn't help. Besides, he had other things to do now. After adding a steel golem production line, the golem factory in front of him was basically completed. However, there was a problem that had to be solved. Insufficient energy. There was only one energy source in the entire Arcanum, the elemental pool in the center of the Arcanum. Originally, the energy of this elemental pool was more than enough to supply the entire Arcanum. However, Sulen continued to transform the Arcanum, adding crystal beast breeding bases, nature oaks, and now the golem factory. The golem factory had the highest energy consumption. Originally, the energy consumption of a golem factory required an elemental pool. However, Sulen's golem factory only had a simplified version of 2 production lines, so it was barely enough. Now, with the addition of the steel golem production line, the energy consumption was huge, so the Arcanum's energy was tight. Sulen was going to build an elemental pool here. He was already familiar with the technology of making elemental pools. Even if there was something he didn't understand, he could ask Hathaway for help. After making the decision, Sulen began to build the elemental pool. According to Hathaway's notes, Sulen began to try to make the elemental pool. The golem factory didn't need a large elemental pool. A medium-sized elemental pool was more than enough. Sulen found a suitable open space in the factory and began to excavate the ground. The elemental pool wasn't big, and the basic materials weren't precious. The pool was made of pure white high-quality marble, and it also needed a large amount of thorium, orichalcum, and other metals to cover it. Finally, runes had to be engraved on the pool, and the runes had to be filled with mithril. Mithril was good at conducting magic. It was resistant to corrosion and oxidation. As long as it wasn't deliberately damaged, it wouldn't be damaged for thousands of years. This was also why many relics left by ancient arcanists could still function after thousands of years. The silver-white carving knife quickly carved on the pool, and beautiful runes appeared on the pool. Soon, when all the runes were engraved, Sulen took out 4 high-quality magic gems and began to sacrifice them to the elemental plane, opening up 4 energy channels connecting the 4 major elemental planes. A powerful magic energy quickly gathered, and then the void was torn apart under Sulen's control. The energy of the 4 major elements slowly poured out of the energy channels, and then turned into light blue elemental water under the transformation of the runic circle. After the elemental water appeared, the concentration of elements in the entire space instantly increased by several levels. As a powerful spatial energy flashed, the 4 elemental channels slowly stabilized, and then these elemental channels began to merge with the 4 runic magic circles of the elemental pool, and finally disappeared. The light blue elemental water in the elemental pool was like a trickle, and it began to slowly fill up the entire elemental pool. Tower. Master, I'm. Close the golem factory. Understood. Shutting down the golem to, the assemblies S, turning off the clay mixer, shutting down the clay molding workshop, shutting down the golem assembly workshop, the rock golem assembly line is shutting down the stone golem carving workshop, shutting down the rock golem grinding workshop, shutting down rock golem assembly workshop, the golem 2. As the tower genie's cold mechanical voice continued to ring, the originally brightly lit and mechanically roaring golem factory slowly quieted down. In the end, only some lights were not extinguished. Master, all energy channels have been closed. Very good, now begin to connect to the golem factory's elemental pool. Sulen directly ordered. Yes, Master. Connecting to the elemental pool. Connection successful. Opening the energy channel. Energy replenishment is in progress. 20%, 25%, 30%. 85%, 90%, 95%, 100% charging complete. Su Len stared at the elemental pool as he watched the energy constantly pouring out. Restart the golem factory. A large amount of elemental energy began to be consumed, and the golem factory started up again. System self-check, please wait. Self-check complete, everything is normal. Start up, the clay golem production line has been successfully started. The stone golem production line has been successfully started. Seeing the two production lines start up again, Su Len secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The next step was the most important. The golems produced by the stone golem production line and the clay golem production line were not considered strong. The steel golems were the main force of the golem army. Start up the steel golem production line. Su Len said slowly after the two production lines were running normally. Yes, master. The steel golem production line has begun self-check complete. Starting up. The equipment slowly started up, and the clay golems on the production line also began to officially run. Soon, the steel golem production line that had just been completed officially began to run. After seeing that the production line was running well, Su Len left the golem factory and let the tower genie number 1 reseal the area. Back in northern town, Su Len was ready to give himself a vacation and slack off. Then he ran to Frodo's place to steal some food, and then dressed casually to go shopping. There was a rush of footsteps, and then a servant came in and said, "Your Majesty, I just received news that the expedition team that was sent to explore the east of the wasteland has returned." Hearing the servant's words, Sullen's eyes widened. The expedition team was a project that he personally started after returning from the astral plane. Last time in the astral plane, Su Len saw the entire world. Other than the continent they were living on, there were several other continents on this planet, and the closest one was the eastern continent, which was across the sea. To the east of the northern wasteland, across the sea was the eastern continent. Su Len had sent people to explore, and he planned to try to open up a new route. If he could open up a trade route from the northern wasteland to the eastern continent, it would definitely become a new golden waterway. It should be known that the coastal countries in the south, even after being exploited by the Red Dragon Queen, still made a lot of money by relying on the sea trade. If Su Len opened up a trade route from here, the profits contained in it would greatly accelerate the development of his territory, and at the same time, earn a lot of money for the construction of the floating city. The floating city cost 100 billion kinnar to build. Even Su Len was shocked. To build such a top-level magic crystal in the arcane era, it would require a lot of resources and money. If he did not expand trade and make money as soon as possible, when would he be able to? The expedition team sent by Su Len followed the simple map provided by him, and advanced along the Red Sand River. The Red Sand River stretched all the way to the sea. Chapter 527. The northern wasteland and the eastern continent were separated by an ocean. Normally, the route would pass through the southern sea islands and enter the southern sea. The merchant ships in the southern sea would buy the goods from the east and sell them to the north, while the rest would be sent to the west by sea. The trade route would not pass through the northern wasteland. Su Len would have to open up a trade route himself if he wanted to get a share of the profits. The northern wasteland used to be desolate, with no human cities. There were only gnolls, kobolds, goblins, barbarians, and beast men. These people would never trade with merchants. They were better at robbing. Now, the only way to open up a trade route was for the merchants of the northern wasteland to travel to the eastern continent. The distance from the northern wasteland to the eastern continent was quite far, and there were no human cities along the way. If Su Len wanted to open up a trade route, he would have to build a city here. The people he sent to scout the route had returned. Where are they now? Su Len asked immediately. Your Majesty, they are still in the city hall, the servant reported. Tell them to come see me. Yes, please wait for a moment." The servant left in a hurry. About a quarter of an hour later, Su Luan saw this group of adventurers. These adventurers looked very tired. Their armor was full of scars, their hair was disheveled, and their faces were dirty. They looked travel-stained. "Did you finish scouting the route?" Su Len asked in a deep voice. "Yes, Your Majesty. We followed the Red Sand River to the southeast. Along the way, we encountered the Jackalan tribe, the Orc tribe, the Gnomes, the Lizard Men, and many other evil enemies. After a lot of hardships, we finally arrived at the Eastern Sea and saw the sea. After that, we—" The middle-aged man in the tattered leather armor said. "I know, and I will give you a generous reward. Now I want to know if you have sorted out all the routes and situations along the way into a map." Su Luan interrupted the middle-aged man's complaint and asked directly. "Handsomely rewarded. A map. We have a complete map. Not only the route, but also some areas by the sea," the adventurer said happily after hearing Sullen's words. "Where is the map?" "Let me see," Su Len said. That adventurer subconsciously took out a sheepskin map from his chest, and handed it to Su Len. When Su Len took it, he seemed to realize that he didn't have the courage to take the map, and could only look at Su Len with a conflicted expression. Su Len ignored the adventurers and opened the map. The map was very simple. After all, these people had never learned how to draw a map. The map looked like an abstract drawing. Luckily, the terrain of the northern wasteland was not complicated. They had already marked out the location of Northern Town and the Redwater River. They had also recorded the other routes. Some areas were even described with words. Although the map was simple, it was still acceptable for the station. Moreover, when he compared it with the northern wasteland that he saw in the astral boundary, the difference wasn't too big. "Very good, your map has met the requirements of this mission." Su Len put down the map and said with a smile, "The reward promised by the city hall will not be small. The reward of 10,000 kinar will not be less. This is the proof of mission completion. You can take it to receive your reward. Of course, after receiving your reward, you will have to lead the army of Northern Town through this route again. Thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. Your reputation is as bright as gold. We are willing to lead the army again." After hearing the reward, these people's eyes were bloodshot, and they couldn't help but show excitement on their faces. "Your Majesty, we—" At this moment, the adventurer suddenly became a little hesitant. Su Len was a little confused. "Do you have something to say?" The adventurer gritted his teeth and finally seemed to make up his mind. "Your Majesty, we want to change the reward." "Change the reward? You think 10,000 kinar is too little?" Su Len said calmly. "What reward do you want?" "Your Majesty, we don't think your reward is too little." Hearing Sullen's words, the adventurer quickly explained, "We want to change the 10,000 kinar to become citizens of Northern Town and distribute houses and land to us." Su Len smiled. "You want to become citizens of Northern Town?" "Of course. That's 10,000 gold nars we're talking about. Even if the 5 of you split it evenly, you'll still get 2,000 gold nars each. That's enough for you to buy a manor in the Kingdom of Florence and live a wealthy life. Are you sure you want to exchange it for the citizens and land in Northtown City?" The adventurers looked at each other and nodded heavily. "Yes, Your Majesty. We are willing to become citizens of Northern Town." "Very good. Then I announce that you can all become citizens of Northern Town. The people from the City Hall will come and help you with the household registration procedures. At the same time, your houses and land will also be distributed. However, you won't get the 10,000 kinar," Su Len said in a deep voice. "Thank you for your generosity." The adventurers bowed to Su Len and said respectfully. Su Len was a little emotional. These adventurers had been living in Northern Town for a year or two. After getting familiar with the city, they really wanted to become citizens of Northern Town. However, Northern Town had high requirements for citizens. Many of these adventurers couldn't pass the inspection. These people were willing to give up the 10,000 kina reward to become citizens of Northern Town, which surprised Su Len. He didn't expect the citizenship of Northern Town to be so precious. Su Len asked the guards to take the adventurers away. He then began to look at the map carefully. At the same time, he asked the army to form an advance party to clear all the obstacles on the road and prepare to build a city on the east coast. Su Len had to build a bridgehead on the east coast if he wanted to trade with the eastern continent. In addition, he had to clear the 15-kilometer area along both sides of the Red Sand River. Su Len planned to transport the goods by water. The caravans would also carry the goods from the Red Sand River to the ocean. It was faster and more efficient than land transportation. It would also save a lot of manpower and resources. This time, Su Len planned to arrange 2 ships for the advance party to record the hydrology of the Red Sand River. At the same time, he planned to build a large dock outside Northern Town to produce ships. There were a lot of trees in the northern wilderness, so it would not be a problem to build a ship. However, it would take some time to learn how to build a ship. In addition, he also needed to recruit enough sailors and navigators. Following Sullen's order, the army soon gathered. The 2 inland river boats were also ready. Chapter 528. There were more than 200 people in the expedition team. Among them, 50 were half-elf and half-human archers, 10 were drow scouts, 10 were half-elf rangers, 10 were dwarf defenders, 30 were barbarian warriors, 30 were centaur rangers, and the rest were all spear guards. Su Len had also arranged for some winged spellcasters to follow the expedition team. With the addition of transport personnel and construction workers, the total number of the expedition team was close to 1,000. Luckily, there were plenty of horses in North Town City, so they could carry a lot of supplies. Otherwise, the expedition team would be even bigger. The expedition team's mission was to build a stronghold on the eastern coast. At the same time, they had to clear the surrounding wasteland monsters. Not only did they have to build a stronghold, but they also had to open up the entire Red Sand River. After all, water transportation was much better than land transportation. Even in the 21st century of his past life, sea transportation was still the cheapest way to transport large quantities of goods. If Su Len wanted to trade with the countries of the eastern continent, the Red Sand River had to be unobstructed. According to the map given by the adventurers, North Town City was about 1,500 kilometers away from the estuary of the Red Sand River. With such a long distance, they had to set up some strongholds and transit stations along the way. Monsters were everywhere in the wasteland. Without a safe place to rest, the trade route would become very dangerous. At the same time, they had to set up transit stations to replenish all kinds of food supplies. A distance of 1,500 kilometers would require at least 5 stronghold transit stations. If this trade route was successfully opened, these stronghold transit stations along the way would soon become new towns and cities on this trade route. However, in order to accomplish all this, Su Len had to face a very difficult problem. Population. The population of North Town City was too small. The entire Duchy of North Wind's population did not exceed 400,000. They had to migrate from the Kingdom of Florence. In the end, they had to spend a lot of money. Fortunately, Su Len had been reforming the Florentine kingdom bit by bit during this period of time. There were a lot of poor people in many areas. Under Phyllis's arrangement, these poor people would be forcibly sent to North Town to supplement the population of Northwind Principality. Su Len planned to make the Duchy of North Wind's population exceed 1 million in 2 to 3 years. North Town City's population would reach 300,000 to 400,000. Mirror Lake City's population would reach 100,000. The new city would also have a population of 100,000. Because of the maple trees planted around the new city, Sulan named it Maple City. Of the remaining population, 200,000 would be arranged in the vast plains outside the city. Sulan planned to build a dozen or so large towns there, while the rest would be arranged in the strongholds to be built on the Red River. According to the weather conditions in the northern wasteland, Sulan would stop after 100 kilometers. The further north they went, the colder the weather would get, and the stronger the monsters in the wasteland would become. Sulan planned to use this 100 kilometers as a buffer zone for North Town City. In this way, the Duchy of North Wind's territory would become very strange. It would be long from east to west and narrow from north to south. However, this was only temporary. Sulan planned to slowly develop the southern part of the northern wasteland, which meant that he would continue to develop from Mirror Lake City to the south. The weather in the south of Mirror Lake City would be warmer. Although there was not as much rain as in the south of Florence due to the mountain range, it was still good. As long as this place was cleaned up, it would be able to grow food and feed more people. In the southeast of North Town City, after crossing the swamp, there were grasslands and forests. There were also many resources there. Sulan planned to take over this place in the future. 2 days later, the exploration team was finally ready. Sulan personally led the exploration team along the Red River to the east coast. According to the description on the map, following the Red River to the south was the direction of the sea. Sulan and the others took a boat down the river, while the army marched on the shore. Since the centaurs raised livestock, there were a lot of horses in Northtown City. The team in front of them had 2 horses per person. Even the workers were riding horses. The Red River meandered for 300 kilometers before turning into a plain. It would also pass through the swamp and eventually merge into the sea. This area was considered an uncivilized area. Many tribes lived in the wasteland. One of them was a tribe of over 300 barbarians. When the exploration team from Northtown City arrived, they volunteered to join them. Although Sulan did not expand his territory here, his reputation in the wasteland was growing as Northtown City rose. The monsters that Northtown City defeated had spread the name of the city. These barbarians admired Sulan's reputation, so they came to join him. Of course, part of the reason was that these barbarians were too poor. When Sulan saw them, most of them were wearing tattered animal hides, and their weapons were very simple. The leading barbarian chief's iron axe was covered in rust. There were even bubbles and iron slag that had not melted yet. Many of them were holding thick wooden sticks and bone weapons. Although they were poor, they were still quite strong. Sulan left 2 barbarians who were familiar with the area. Chapter 529. The Red Sand River meandered to the southeast. The further it went to the southeast, the smoother it became. The surface of the river also became wider. The speed of the boats had slowed down a lot. The boats in Northern Town City were just ordinary inland sailing boats. Most of the time, they had to use oars to row the boats, so the quality of the boats was limited. Sulan had already sent people to the coastal countries in the south to recruit more people before he came here. The inland sailing boats were still acceptable, but the boats used for ocean trade were not suitable. The environment of the ocean was too different from inland rivers. The wind and waves alone were incomparable to the ocean. Take Sulan's boat for example. If they went out to sea, not to mention running into a storm, a single wave could smash their boat into pieces. A powerful boat was necessary to carry out ocean trade. Northern Town City did not have many talented people who could build boats, and they did not even have a single boat worker. When the time came, they would have to recruit people from the south to build the boats. However, Sulan did have some blueprints for the boats. If they followed the normal way to build a qualified boat, with the technology of Northern Town City, it would take them at least 2 years to build one. However, this was a world of magic. Sulen could build a magical boat with the power of magic. Compared to ordinary boats, a magical boat was a deadly weapon. The cost of a magical boat was not cheap, but Sulen could still afford to build one. Overall, the Red Sand River was relatively safe, but there were still some ignorant people who wanted to attack them. Then, there was nothing else. Over 200 elite soldiers from Northern Town City could easily take down a city with 10,000 people, let alone a few tribes in the wasteland. The soldiers from Northern Town City easily wiped out 5 or 6 small tribes. The surrounding tribes were all trembling in fear. Some of them even started to migrate. As for the lizard men in the swamp, they even ran away when they saw the soldiers from Northern Town City. The lizard men still remembered when Sulen wiped out the lizard men on a large scale. They were scared out of their wits when they saw the flag of Northern Town City. If it weren't for the fact that Sulen wasn't interested in the swamp, these lizard men would have been wiped out long ago. They continued to travel southeast along the river. Not far from the southern swamp was a lush forest. There was a group of half-elves living there. This group of half-elves was quite large, about 1,000 people. This was the data left behind by the adventurers last time. Sulen wanted to recruit this half-elf tribe. These half-elves were born archers, and there were even druid rangers among them. They were quite strong, and they were quite pleasing to the eye, but they did not join North Town City. The gnomes were the masters of the forest. The best way for Sulen to subdue them was to rely on the nature oak. As long as Sulen took out the nature oak tree, the half-elves would most likely choose to join Northern Fortress City. However, the half-elves refused to interact with him for now. Sulen had to find a way to get to know them better. He planned to let the half-elves in his territory interact with the half-elves. The Red Sand River was already 300 meters wide. There were many tributaries that extended from the main river. This area had plenty of water, and there were many lakes around. The environment was quite good. However, there were some water monsters living in these lakes. They looked very similar to the ones in North Town City, but they were a bit bigger. If other ships encountered these water monsters, there was a high chance that they would sink into the river. However, Sulen was the unlucky ones. In fact, Sulen didn't even need to do anything. The half-elf magic archers had already made their move. Frost arrows were fired, and the water monsters in the river were instantly frozen. Then, the barbarian warriors jumped up and broke the ice with their sharp battle axes. The army of North Town City began to clear out the water monsters in the area. They could let the other monsters go, but they had to clear out the water monsters. These things were too dangerous for ships. Normal ships would be destroyed if they ran into them. Sulen wanted to open up a trade route, so he had to clear out the water monsters. Most water monsters had their own areas of activity. Any creature that entered their territory would be attacked by the water monsters. If a ship wanted to enter the sea, they had to pass through the area. The water monsters wouldn't care about that. They would surely attack. The army of North Town City was very familiar with their teamwork. They soon killed the water monsters one by one. Apart from the useful materials on the monsters, they simply discarded the rest. Your Majesty, we will see an island in the middle of the river not far ahead. Once we see the island, we will reach the estuary, the adventurer who was acting as a guide said. Sulen nodded. He took out a telescope and looked around. When they reached the estuary, the river widened dramatically. The estuary was a huge trumpet-shaped channel. The deeper they went into the sea, the bigger the channel became. The island in the middle of the trumpet-shaped channel was the center of the channel. The island wasn't big. It was about 2 kilometers wide and 4 to 5 kilometers long. The island was covered in weeds and trees. It was perfect for building a shipyard. The ship passed by the island in the middle of the river. After passing through the estuary, they could see the boundless sea. Seeing the sea for the first time in his life, Su Luan also felt a surge of excitement. Those soldiers and craftsmen who had never seen the sea before were even more astonished. These inland people couldn't imagine the vastness of the sea at all. Now seeing it with their own eyes, they were naturally shocked. Su Len ordered the ship to dock. Everyone went ashore and prepared to set up a camp. At the same time, they had to unload the things they were carrying. Su Len was planning to build a city by the sea to trade with the eastern continent. If it was successful, the city would become the most prosperous city in North Wind Principality for a while. After arriving at the beach, Su Len immediately sent people to cut down trees and set up a camp. At the same time, he sent the army to search the area. Since they were planning to build a city, they had to clear out the dangers around. A large number of soldiers and workers were sent out. Soon, the workers began to cut down trees. Su Len chose a flat area not far from the sea to set up a camp. The soldiers of North Town City patrolled the area. They didn't find any monsters, but Su Len didn't let his guard down. The workers of North Town City were very experienced. It didn't take long for them to set up a simple camp. Chapter 530. The sun gradually dimmed, and the Lady of Silver Moon slowly rose into the sky. The night had darkened. The craftsmen had gone to rest after a long day of hard work. The sound of waves hitting the beach came from the distance. The camp in Northtown City was not big. Apart from the night watchers, everyone else had gone to bed. Su Len was drawing a map of the surrounding area. Su Luan didn't plan to live here for a long time. After the construction of the camp was completed, he would build a teleportation circle here. This would become the most important port city of the Northwind Principality and even the Kingdom of Florence. At the same time, he had to draw up a plan for the city. The next day, as soon as the sun rose from the east, the camp was already bustling with noise and excitement. They had freshly caught seafood for breakfast. There was a lot of seafood in the area. No one had been here for thousands of years, so there were countless fish. There was no need to worry about food. With enough food, Su Len did not have to spend so much effort to transport supplies from Northtown City. A few hundred craftsmen began to build the stronghold, but it was not enough to build a town with so few people. Su Len ordered the army of Northtown City to sweep the surrounding wilderness and capture all kinds of slaves to build the town. The nearby tribes were unlucky this time. With Northtown City's strength, these mid-sized tribes with less than 1,000 people were easily defeated by a few waves of arrows. Following that, they began to capture people from all over the place. In just 3 days, over 5,000 monster slaves had been gathered around the settlement. A large number of slaves began to build the town under the command of the craftsmen. The exploration team had brought a lot of resources and enough manpower. The construction of the town was very fast. While the town was being built, a shipyard was also being built on the island in the middle of the river. Su Len left the teleportation coordinates here and returned to Northtown City. At the same time, the second exploration team was ready. This time, there were 5,000 people in the team. Apart from 1,000 soldiers, the rest were all craftsmen. Su Len wanted to finish building the port as soon as possible, so he had transferred half of the workers from Northtown City. As Su Len was preparing more resources, he suddenly heard Hathaway's voice in his mind. Su Len, come to the Wizard Tower. Wait a moment, I'll be right there. Hearing Hathaway's telepathic message, Su Len did not delay. He put down the work in his hands and walked straight to the Adept Tower. Why did you call me here in such a hurry? What happened? Su Len asked as soon as he arrived at the astrology platform. Hathaway quickly stepped forward and grabbed Su Len. Then, with a flash of light, the two of them arrived in a strange space. Look, what is that? Su Len only felt his vision blur, and then he arrived in a strange space. Following the direction of Hathaway's finger, he saw a 3-meter-tall golem shining like diamonds appear in front of him. Is this a diamond golem? Sulen recognized the colossus at a glance and exclaimed in surprise. Yes, the diamond golem. Hathaway said proudly, for this big guy, I've spent a lot of precious materials. But it's all worth it. Hathaway said as she came in front of the diamond golem. With a flash of light, the sleeping diamond golem slowly woke up. Master. The golem's cold mechanical voice sounded. How strong is it? Sulen circled the tall diamond golem and asked. Legendary level. Its defense is very high, and its attack is not weak either. You can try it yourself. Hathaway said with a wink. That's good, but what if it's broken? Sulen said eagerly. That's easy. Hathaway smiled slightly, and then a dazzling light rose from her body. Mirror dimension. A strange light instantly enveloped Sulen, and then he felt his body enter a strange space. The whole space seemed to be silver white, and in front of him, there was a person who looked exactly like him. This is... Sulen stared at Hathaway with wide eyes. Hathaway smiled and said, this is a legendary level spell, Mirror Dimension. It can create a mirror world, and in this world, it can create a perfect mirror clone. As long as the mirror dimension is not broken, it will not cause any harm to the main body. It's more than enough to test the strength of the diamond golem. There's such a spell? It's perfect for training. Sulen said with bright eyes. Hathaway glanced at him and said, don't even think about it. This is a legendary level spell. It's not that easy to use. Sulen was a little embarrassed. It seemed that it was impossible to use this spell as a training ground. Okay, control your mirror clone and train with the diamond golem. Hathaway snapped her fingers, and the diamond golem was instantly activated. Sulen did not hesitate. He took out the storm halberd and rushed up. Clang! There was a muffled sound. The diamond golem did not care about Sulen's attack at all. The storm halberd smashed against it, and sparks flew. The diamond golem directly slashed down, and the heavy greatsword came down with a whistling sound that tore through the air. Bang! Rocks flew. Sulen's figure turned into an afterimage. He dodged the diamond golem's attack and jumped to the side in an instant. What's going on? Why is the power of my weapon so much weaker? Sulen stared at the diamond golem and asked. Your legendary level weapon can't be completely simulated with the mirror dimension spell, so it's only at the level of a high-grade magic tool. Hathaway shrugged. Although the mirror dimension was powerful, it required a lot of energy to create a clone of a legendary level tool. Now that she had made the golem, it would be difficult to make Sulen's weapon. That was why Hathaway did not make one. The mirror dimension was actually used by mages for group fights. Brilliant arcanists could create a large number of mirror clones to attack the enemy. These mirror clones could basically reach 80% of the original strength, apart from the equipment. You're discriminating. It's not fair. Sulen's face darkened. Although legendary-level warriors were powerful, they relied more on their equipment than legendary-level wizards. A bare-handed legendary-level warrior and a legendary-level warrior with equipment and weapons were two completely different concepts. Fortunately, Sulen was not a pure warrior. You'd better hurry up and deal with the golem. Hathaway winked mischievously, and then said to the golem, Big guy, beat him up for me. Yes, master. The diamond golem said in a deep voice, and then rushed towards Sulen with heavy steps. Chapter 531. Rumble. Sulen's body burst out with dazzling lightning, instantly enveloping the storm battle halberd. The storm battle halberd once again swept across with endless lightning, smashing heavily on the diamond golem. Lightning flashed, and a clear wound finally appeared on the diamond golem. So King hard. Seeing the scratch, Su Len cursed, then hurriedly dodged the diamond golem's sweep. His footsteps flashed, and he tried to circle to the side. Under normal circumstances, the diamond golem had 100 points of physical resistance, and was immune to most physical attacks with 100 points of strength. At the same time, it also had 100 points of resistance to cold, strong acid, lightning, and fire. It also had 100 points of magic resistance. In simple terms, any elemental damage below 100 points and magic damage below 100 points would have no effect on them. Sullen's attack could naturally break through the golem's defense, but it felt like using an axe to chop a rock. Greater haste. Greater mage armor. Greater deflection force field. Greater slow. At this moment, rays of light suddenly rose from Hathaway's body, instantly enveloping the diamond golem. The golem's speed instantly doubled. At the same time, an earthy yellow light appeared on Sullen's body. Sullen's body seemed to sink into mud, and his speed suddenly decreased. A strong wind blew, and the diamond golem wielding its heavy sword instantly appeared in front of him. Su Len only had time to block with the storm battle halberd. With a muffled clang, Sullen's body was directly sent flying a few meters away. "You're cheating." Su Len exerted force on his feet and said as he steadied himself. "The diamond golem is a wizard's trump card. It's normal for it to be buffed with spells." Hathaway squinted her eyes and said with a smile, looking like a little fox. Su Len was speechless. Su Len did not have time to refute. The diamond golem rushed up again, swinging its greatsword quickly. "You really think you can defeat me like this?" Sullen's storm battle halberd swept across, and the powerful force made the diamond golem retreat slightly. Lightning spear. The dazzling lightning burst out in an instant. The storm halberd in Su Luan's hand had completely turned into a weapon composed of lightning. Superior cat's elegance. High-level barbaric bull's strength. Advanced insight. Greater haste. In an instant, Sullen's figure disappeared from where he stood. In the next second, he appeared on the other side of the diamond golem and slashed down with his storm halberd. Bang! Endless lightning erupted from his body, and Surin's power was completely unleashed. The astonishing power tore through the air, accompanied by a bolt of lightning that seemed to tear through space. The storm war halberd viciously slashed towards the diamond golem in front of him. Crack! A crisp sound rang out as a crack appeared on the diamond golem's originally hard and smooth body. This crack gradually expanded, and then, with a bang, a palm-sized hole appeared on the diamond golem's body. "It's really hard, but I still smashed it." Sullen's figure disappeared again. At the same time, the giant sword in the diamond golem's hand suddenly swept across, and the strong wind all hit Sullen's position just now. After using his full strength, Sullen's figure accelerated again, and with the help of Blink, he completely disappeared in a flash. Su Len continued to attack, and afterimages appeared around him. The diamond golem kept attacking, but it had no effect. This kind of fighting style was something that even legendary rogues who were proficient in shadow travel could not do. Although they could escape into the shadows, they could not completely disappear. Even shadow travel had limitations. The number of times a rogue could use shadow travel was limited, and it could not be used in places without shadows. After using his full strength, Su Len fought to his heart's content. In a short period of time, a large number of scars appeared on the diamond golem's body. The originally crystal-like body became bumpy and full of cracks. Thunder Fury Slash. A bolt of lightning appeared, and the powerful lightning power turned into a blue chain, instantly blocking the diamond golem's movement. "It's over." Su Len shouted and slashed the storm battle halberd at the diamond golem's head. With a flash of dazzling lightning, the tall diamond golem in front of him was instantly divided into two parts. Boom! The huge diamond golem fell to the ground in an instant, and the originally hard diamond shattered into countless pieces in an instant. Although the storm battle halberd mirror projection was only at the level of a high-grade magic weapon, the diamond golem could not withstand this kind of attack after being blessed with many spells and Sullen's abnormally powerful strength. As the diamond golem was completely destroyed, the diamond golem, which had been shattered into countless pieces, quickly turned into a fluorescent light and disappeared. Clap, clap, clap. A burst of crisp and pleasant applause sounded, and Hathaway said with a look of amazement, "What a wonderful performance. Such a powerful diamond golem was torn apart by you. Don't think that I'll forgive you just because you praise me. Tonight, I'll teach you a good lesson and let you have a taste of the lightning spear." Su Len waved his hand and dispersed the lightning. "HMPF, you're lucky this time. I still haven't given the diamond statue a fighting ability. Wait until I give it to him, then you'll know how powerful he is." Hathaway snorted. She then waved her hand lightly, and the mirror image space in front of her shattered into countless pieces in an instant like a mirror. Su Len and Hathaway's figures instantly appeared on the astrology platform, and the diamond golem also appeared beside Hathaway. Looking at the tall and burly diamond golem, Su Len nodded slightly. Although he had been suppressing the diamond golem in the battle just now, this did not mean that the diamond golem was weak. After all, Sullen's strength was already at the high legendary level, and his character level had reached level 30. For this diamond golem to be able to withstand his full power for so long, it was already very powerful. "How many of this thing are you going to produce?" Su Len asked. 2. The cost of building a diamond golem is a bit high, so 2 is more than enough. Next, I'm going to try to build other golems. Hathaway let the diamond golem go back to standby. Although the diamond golem is powerful, it also has its flaws. It doesn't have magic attacks, and it's not very effective against some special enemies. The golem army not only requires strength, but also cooperation. There's going to be a lot of money to burn next. Hearing Hathaway's figure, Su Len couldn't help but click his tongue. The diamond golem was the lowest cost among the legendary golems. For example, the arcane guard cost at least 2 million kinnar, and the magic breaker was even more expensive. You're tuning in to the UnparalleledSwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.